get them more comfortable with it, so they know that's an option in the future. Since obviously that workforce needs a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Then afterwards they could get addicted to JavaScript and C++ and all that other nonsense that I can't even remember the names of.
Oh yeah, that all that crap. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just for people who don't know, Raspberry Pi is a kind of like this interface that allows you to connect like hardware to software on different parts of the world, kind of thing. And it's a weird way of calling something. So if you want a printer connected to your network, use this Raspberry Pi to connect to it. So it's complicated, but I don't know why they call it a Raspberry Pi. It's not a delicious dessert. It's just a.
I swear it's the mathematical Pi as well, right?
Yeah.
So just like the code is like the last 5 digits of pi is the correct password. Oh, okay, what's the last 5 digits of pi? Oh no, it's infinite.
Is that what used in Big Bang Theory when they like controlled like the lights and in the room like across the world? Does anybody know the episode I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, where like they had like remote control cars, but like they were controlled by someone from Taiwan or something. Yeah. That is actually kind of what that is based off. It's just a bit complicated. It's just like, I can't believe anyone would bother to set it up. But I was like, yeah, no, someone would set it up somehow. It just took a long time to do so.
Lots of people have time, like the wives in this film, who have nothing better to do. Whoever picked this film, why did you pick this film?
Oh no, poor Ben.
Oh no, it's gonna be. Oh, it's 3 against. What is it? 3 against everyone else. Oh, that's not too bad.
I was so waiting to go, Ben. Why did you pick this Tim Burton's badly disguised fetish song? Emmanuel just took it from me.
Really?
Sorry, that segue was good to ignore.
Is everyone ready? Rob recording.
I am not. Emmanuel, your scores aren't up, so I don't know what's coming from you, but it doesn't sound good.
I'll score in a bit. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
So I guess before we start, should we just ask? So how was everyone's Christmases?
Good.
Very good.
All the better for watching Edward Scissorhands.
I mean, that was a bump in the road, but today was a good day.
You had to go to eat for a second.
Oh, I've got my Christmas T-shirt on today.
That's nice.
Nice.
Same old as last week.
Nice.
Very
I got Snoopy.
I got Christmas Justice League.
Nice.
Oh, Justice League. Nice.
Yeah.
Cute.
Very nice.
Okay. So wait, Rob, you have set up now, right?
Yeah, we're all good.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Awesome.
What's missing though?
What is the what?
There's Manuel and Camilla's scores aren't in yet.
Oh yeah, we bugged them and they haven't done it. And Manuel keeps like.
Sure. We're gonna do them. Don't worry. Camilla was saying sorry, but you couldn't hear it.
Sorry, I totally forgot. I'll do mine in a second. I'll do mine right now, actually. And I
So I
actually
need
hate
the
it,
energy.
unlike everyone else, apparently.
Pardon?
I said I didn't hate it, unlike a lot of other people.
I didn't hate it either.
I mean, yeah, we didn't hate it. It's just like
I liked it.
it's not.
I hated it.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. See your scores. You obviously hate.
Ben's always known I've hated it, so he wasn't surprised.
Shall we let Ben go first and then everyone do the opening?
Ben, Why did you choose this Tim Burton's badly disguised fetish film?
Well, it wasn't for that reason. I think the first point that out. Yeah, this film, yeah, I have put off because I know obviously people like you and Pat have been like dreading it for forever.
People like you.
Yeah, it's one of the films that I've loved for a very long time, and Rob as well. And it's kind of cemented in why I like Tim Burton as a filmmaker and just like a storyteller. And Edward Scissorhands, since for as long as I can remember, has just been like a timeless story, a fairy tale in kind of like in live action telling, and it stood the test of time for loads of reasons, at least for me, because it kind of like told the world that Tim Burton, known for his kind of like his kooky weird stuff. He didn't have much heart to it because he did Pee-wee, he did Beetlejuice and Batman. It's like, what else could he do? Could he prove to the world that he could do that kind of like had a bit of heart and soul to it? And I would argue the previous films did have that too, but this film more so than the others because it kind of has his own kind of like upbringing and kind of personal growth and kind of childhood rolled into one, coming into this film, coming into his adulthood as well, and how he like grew up. And it's kind of like his version of a kind of a Frankenstein tale of just literally kind of going in from a person who's shunned, basically a story of loneliness where someone is kind of like shunned for being different and kind of looked down upon for their quirkiness and strangeness, but realize that they're literally kind of misunderstood from the get-go. And obviously, as we know, it became a trope for Tim Burton going forward from this. But I think this is the film that he kind of cemented it as like, yeah, there are kind of drawbacks and flaws to this kind of thing. And it kind of was, I suppose it's kind of, it's basically kind of like just how like being a misfit and being an artist would get you ridiculed, and just going from that would be how it would reflect him as a filmmaker and people like him growing up. I'm kind of rambling because I kind of figuring out the way to kind of like talk into this as we go on. But I suppose like most Tim Burton films deal with like an outsider, but I feel that this one especially deals with loneliness the most because it's kind of that's the central theme, and that's why I kind of like love this film so much, and why people like me and people like Rob and everyone that loves this film gets so much out of it, because of loneliness is something that kind of everyone can relate to, and everyone can kind of feel be put in the same boat, and kind of like being an artist is being lonely, being a filmmaker can be lonely, and all these things can come into it because of just how being just a little bit different can set you apart, and how trying to fit in only makes things worse and kind of just gets you shunned and kind of like stirs the pot and makes it far worse for yourself and everyone else. And trying to do good doesn't always end up being the right thing to do, and fairy tales don't always have a happy ending. And Edward Scissorhands, I feel, has a bit bittersweet ending. It doesn't have the traditional fairy tale ending that you'd think, or kind of like it's not completely dour, but it's just kind of like things don't go the way they want, but there's still a glimmer of like hope there, and I think that's the big reason why it strikes a chord with me, and how Tim Burton, just his direction and his films in general have always been one close to my heart because of how he kind of like projects his own look on the world to everyone else. And it's kind of like this film, in a sense, was surprisingly a big hit, and which was surprising to Burton himself, because of kind of like how actually people out there do kind of relate to this and do actually connect to this, which is something he didn't expect. He thought he was going to make this small indie film that were just going to be like make no money and just be like no one's going to appreciate it. But although you know a lot of people did, and it just grew and grew, and his career has just kind of like grown from that. And it's the weird thing about it is that the film itself represents his rise to Hollywood and his kind of like popularity, because it's like Edward Scissorhands in the film kind of like he's embraced for his quirkiness at first, and everyone kind of loves him for his like uniqueness and strangeness, and it's only for a bit longer people start to turn on him because it's like, oh, actually this guy's does this and that, we can take advantage of him, we can do this, we don't understand him, we're gonna just like, oh, now he's not doing what we want him to do, he's not fitting into the mold we want him to be, they're gonna ostracize him again. And it's just kind of that up and down like experience he had as a filmmaker as well, for being admired and then kind of revered and then at the same time shunned because of his like weirdness. So it's just this up and down kind of like thing that is kind of like very similarly self-meditated, self kind of reflectory of who he is. Referential, yes, thank you. That's kind of it. And it's kind of like, yeah, not everyone's going to take into it like, and not me and Rob perhaps, but I think most people understand why it would, because it is so out there. It's just so kind of like, it's a timeless film because it's so like, is this the 1960s? Is this modern day? Is this in the far past? Is it the future? Is it? It's really hard to pin down what kind of era this film is, because it's kind of represents a kind of like a hazy memory of Tim Burton had of growing up in Burbank, California, as well, and it's kind of the mix of that and his love of old school horror movies.
I'm just unpacking right now.
From his childhood all rolled into one, so it's kind of got that about it where it's just that makes it a fairy tale for me, because it's so hard to pin down. It's kind of strange for that reason, but I'll go into more details later, especially in the setting and the townspeople and how and all the people that he meets, Edward Scissorhands meets as a character. But yeah, I was always prepared that this film won't be everyone's taste, but I think it's one that I think you can admire the artistry behind it, if nothing else.
Yeah, I think it. Oh, sorry, you can too.
Yes, only because I've had to write it down on my phone. I've got 1% and I'm stressed. So I was going to forget everything. So I'm going to cut in before Rob does, because it would be a forever otherwise. Yeah, so it was my first time watching. I don't know if it's my first time watching a Tim Burton film, but I think I always Big Fish. But I think I kind of sometimes associate Tim Burton and his work with kind of like a genre of films I don't like, and I don't know where I've kind of got that from. And I think it was quite similar.
No, I agree. That's normal.
Pardon?
I said no. I agree. That's normal.
Yeah, I think until I watched Big Fish, I didn't kind of, maybe my perception of what he did was different. So I was quite obviously grateful that Rob showed me Big Fish, and therefore was quite open-minded to Edward Scissorhands. But I think I had always thought that Edward Scissorhands would be more like horror, and I don't know why I'm thinking of somebody that had with pies. What's that one with the pies? There's another film.
Sweeney Todd.
That's it, yeah. I think I was too confused. Anyway, that's kind of where I was coming at as a starting point. I think I'd always associated the two as being similar. And so I didn't fully know what I was going into, but obviously, yeah, Big Fish was kind of a good opening to that. And I really, really liked it. I actually really enjoyed it as a film, Ben. And I said to Rob, I was really grateful that like Film Club existed, because actually it's something that I probably wouldn't have watched off my own back, and Rob would have been bothering me for ages to watch, and so it was quite nice to have it picked. So I really did enjoy that. And I think one of the things that really spoke to me was it kind of, and Rob and I kind of spoke about this a bit afterwards, where it feels a bit like a kind of a metaphor it could be a metaphor for so many things. I know I think Rob said online, or your perspectives maybe around like somebody who has autism, for example, or is neurodivergent. But I was saying to Rob, it also could be, I don't know, somebody who is a immigrant or perhaps a particular race or ethnicity. Like there's so many different ways it could kind of be thought about, and I think that was what made me find it particularly kind of interesting or kind of drawn to it. And the idea of like, I guess, the character of Edward himself being perceived as being really dangerous because of the his hands and so on, but actually him not being the most dangerous person within that film. He's not actually the most threatening person. I guess Jim, for example, is. And I think the idea of sometimes how we perceive or stereotype or draw labels and actually don't kind of go beyond the kind of physical. I think that kind of stood out for me as a theme or an idea. And then I think obviously the idea of the kind of the Bogs, I think they're called, the family, Peg and Kim's family, are they the Bogs? The idea of like the kindness that they show and that kind of almost not being quite enough, and that idea of like them kind of wanting to help him but not really being fully equipped as a family to help him, and that maybe being a kind of a factor of the era or the time that there it's kind of set. I know it's kind of quite ambiguous, but I found that kind of dynamic really kind of interesting and kind of gave me some things to think about. And then I think what I really liked about the film was kind of that kind of Pleasantville-esque kind of production, the kind of set that it was in, and that kind of stark contrast between where he lived and obviously the kind of town or village. But I also really liked the ending. I know you touched this kind of a bit already around that kind of, it didn't have that cliche ending, and I think if it had done, that actually some way him and Kim, it had all worked out and they'd found a way to kind of have him function and kind of live in society and so on, I probably would have been like, oh, that's so shit, why did they do that kind of thing. I would have probably been really annoyed. But I'm glad it ended in the way that it did, that he just kind of left to just kind of exist on his own. So overall I thought it was a really kind of touching film about kind of like difference, acceptance, loneliness, I guess kind of like barriers, I guess, in terms of like love and romance. But I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was a really great pick, and I look forward to discussing it a bit further this evening. So thanks, Ben. It was a great pick. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's one that I've loved since I was like, I don't know, really young, man. Like I remember watching it with my mum like regularly as a kid, and I think because we loved it so much when I was a kid, that's why we ended up going to see Big Fish as well, because it was like, oh, it's a new Tim Burton film, like it's like he did Edward Scissorhands, it's going to be awesome. And I think because it's a film that I've loved for so long, it's one that I feel like I get something different out of every time I watch it. And this is the first time I've watched it in maybe, I don't know, a good like 5-6 years at least. So it's the first time I've watched it like as somebody who kind of like moved down to Worthing, bought a house, and like all of that kind of stuff. And I think this time watching it, I was like, yeah, this really is a film for like anyone who has ever been somewhere where they feel like they don't fully fit in. And I think like picking up on all the stuff about how like, you know, he's treated as special when he's benefiting everyone else, but then as soon as he's stopped being of their benefit, he's the freak and he's dangerous and all this kind of stuff. I was like, yeah, that's really speaking to like a lot of things about, well, anyone really, like Rachel said, like, you know, whether it's kind of like a sort of like a neurodivergence thing, or if it's like a race thing or like a class thing, like I think you can find a bit of any of that in there. I really picked up on like a few little bits this time that I maybe didn't pick up previously. So like the scene in the bank I thought was really cool, where like he's trying to raise money for his salon, and because he hasn't got any credit, they're like, oh no, you need to go and get a car, and it's like he's got fucking scissors for hands. How's he gonna drive a car? And it's like just that whole thing of like getting advice because that's how people do things, but it's not advice that's applicable to him. And it's like this whole thing about like him being in a world that doesn't cater for him because he's a bit different. I thought that was really cool. And also the scene in the police station as well, where the policeman's like, oh, he's like, oh, he's concerned about him basically because he can see that he's like not fully developed sort of mentally kind of thing. And then he's saying to what you assume is like some kind of doctor, he's like, is he going to be all right out there? And the doctor's like, well, he's really underdeveloped and his sense of reality is this. And because he's been in isolation for so long, he's got these problems. And the policeman's like, yeah, but is he going to be all right? And he's like, oh yeah, he'll be fine. And it's like, well, fucking hell, like help him. Like, and like all those things I really picked up on this time, because it's like people know that he needs help, but nobody apart from the Bogs is willing to help him, and they're so ill-equipped to help him that it ends up how it is. And I just think it's really, for me, it's really beautifully written from that point of view. And yeah, and there's so many moments in it that it's like when you watch them again, it's like I'm reliving kind of like this magical childhood period where everything was like sort of benefits. It really takes me back to it, like the like the ice sculptures. Like I really started tearing up at that, and then at the end when she starts talking about how it didn't snow before he arrived and now it does snow, I was like, I don't know why I'm crying, but I am. I can't stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's because it's a beautiful fairy tale in that regard, and it kind of captures that. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense where you get the ice. It doesn't make sense how it goes to the travel to the town, but you don't care because it's like a Disney film. It's kind of like you just kind of get the emotions from the meaning behind it, and that's the most important thing, I think. And that's why it works.
Yeah, and then you know what? Even that bit as well. So like, so the ending was happening, and it's a bit where she says like, "Oh, I don't want to see him again because I'm an old lady now, and I want him to remember me how I was." It's so I don't know what started it, but Rachel said, "Oh, is he immortal?" And then it goes to the scene where he's like still a young man, and that fucking got me as well. I was fucking blubbing for the whole thing, and I still haven't really worked out what it was that got me.
Just an emotional soul.
Yeah, but no, I really love it. I feel like it's a film that's like grown as I have in terms of like what I get from it and what I see in it and what I relate to.
Oh yeah, yeah,
and that's awesome. Yeah, it's a definite all timer for me.
I think I'm. Well, oh, actually, I think Corey likes it probably a bit more than me. Let's do Corey first, then. Let's do Corey, then me. Then I'm pretty sure we'll let Alec and Pat have a go afterwards. Once once we soften the blow. Go on, Corey.
Yeah, the slow descent. Yeah. I've seen this movie many times, and it's very memorable and a classic to me. And so I was looking forward to a rewatch. I think I watched it for Christmas last year. But as I've said many times before, I always like looking at it with a new set of eyes, seeing if I pick up anything different or see something differently. And I enjoy it more than I have before, just with the increased attention to just like the story and the detail of it all. And I have like multiple elements in this movie that are really relatable to me, really touched me in a like significant way. Um and in my notes, like I just like when I was like thinking of like the purpose of this whole story and film, like it's just a lot of stuff, like really important meaningful themes, like loneliness, like Ben mentioned, and isolation. And also, with that, on the other side of the coin, you see people wanting to try to reach out and connect with other people, with the inventor, like he was lonely, he made Edward. And you see the lonely housewife trying to connect in her way. And I also, what was really interesting to me was seeing like the broad spectrum of like a society and community of people. You have somebody, a bit of like the variety of different people and how they relate to Edward. And I'm really glad that they had some people like Peg, like the mother, who was just like so kind-hearted, and sweet and lovely, and just genuinely felt for somebody like Edward and wanted to try to help him. She had like the best kind intentions, although a little naive herself. And somebody like, Kim, who had like the worst boyfriend on the planet. But somehow she managed just to be really lovely herself, I guess. It runs in the family. And then, and I also like seeing how people just dealt with loneliness differently and dealt with like rejection differently. You know, we saw like the wife get rejected, the housewife get rejected by Edward, and how she dealt with that. And we see like the boyfriend, I felt like he felt rejected by his girlfriend, because you know he felt kind of, obviously he felt kind of threatened by Edward. So there's definitely a theme of just like ego, I feel like, and how people deal with hits to the ego. And that was really frustrating to watch, in all honesty, obviously. um and yeah, back to just like the kind sweetness of people that you could find with the police officer. That was really unexpected. I didn't like, I remember feeling like, you know, at first, like when the officer was worrying about Edward, I'm like, is he worried about like Edward being a danger, or is he worried for the well-being of Edward himself? And when I figured out it was about Edward, I'm just like, wow, that's really unexpected, but really lovely. That could happen sometimes, and it's good to be reminded, but there are good people out there. um so yeah, and how I like really related on a personal level is that I related to Edward. I'm like, he's, you know, artistic, creative, and kind of like an outsider, feels very much like an outsider, and doesn't have the like um innate like skill and ability to just like easily connect with other people. And um and um so that was really relatable and really sad to see. And I thought that it was like, you know, with how it all ended for him, um it didn't have the fairy tale ending, and that's what kind of makes it kind of heartbreaking, um to see how he ended up having to be by himself again. But it was a really I felt like a really realistic telling of like how could go with somebody just trying to like drop somebody like him just into the deep end and see how he does. Whether and it was by the best intentions. And but it's just sad to see how like not everything really works out in the perfect way you want. Which makes in unfortunately, which makes for a good story when everything doesn't work out perfectly. Um but yeah, it was really impactful. You know, I've cried every time I watch it. I cry at least once. Um, and yeah, I'll briefly look at my notes because I always forget something that I wanted to say, but I think I covered most of it. Yeah. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is just like the frustration I felt with the like fickleness and like the volatility of like the community, the neighborhood, and how like I've seen that as a pattern in our own society, you know, how quickly like public opinion can change, and it just becomes a whole dangerous mob mentality thing, which I think is a really relevant and sad issue, really. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to be human. We can be pieces of crap sometimes. But anyway, yeah, I just thought this like I don't think it will ever not have relevancy in society and with people and the nature of humans and how we need human connection and community, and it's really sad when somebody isn't able to have that as easily as somebody else. So yeah, that's basically it for me.
Awesome.
Okay. So, how to start? Again, I think I'm probably one of the ones who haven't watched this for a long time. It would, I weirdly speaking, it was probably been better that I didn't rewatch it because I had a better opinion of remembering the memory of when I watched it than rewatching it now with a critical eye. It seems like it had the same thing with like what I had with El Dorado. I was like, oh, it was better in my memory. Unfortunately, watching it now again, it's made me go, oh, I can see the flaws. Unfortunately, in this film,
Can't stop shitting on El Dorado. It was
It was
fucking
shit.
weeks ago. Still shitting on it.
but in any case, this film definitely has the stranger in a stranger land thing, and it's like a foreign it is a stranger in a stranger land. It's just like something that's foreign and it's exciting, but until something bad happens, then after it all suddenly turns ever so quickly. Because Edward was with the family for like a few months at least, like a whole season until summer, until about winter time, until it actually becomes cold enough for him to make ice sculptures. So it's interesting to see how quickly that everyone around him changed, because when they first saw him, it was exciting, it was new, it was fresh. Then afterwards, it slowly turned into violence and just extreme violence after a while. And it's just seeing I don't know how to say it. I guess it would be like how they were as a community in the early 1950s, 90s. Actually, what is the time period set in this? Because all of those colors are so pastel, I can't quite tell what's
It's really ambiguous, but it's kind of like a 1950s, 60s thing, because I feel like it's just like how it was in Blue Velvet, the David Lynch movie. It's this idealistic 1950s America, this commercialized America that's just perfect, and like picture postcards and stuff. That's kind of what the vibe Burton was going for. So it is kind of like that, but the fact that they kind of have like sort of modern, some old cars and some modern things as well around it. So it has this vagueness about it that's kind of interesting. So it is, all those bit of ingredients.
Okay, so to get to the point I was trying to get, I see where everyone said it could be about a thing about just being someone who is a different person. I definitely saw it more as a race thing, like with let's say an immigration thing, or like a person who is like an immigrant coming into the country. Because the only person of color I thought about was the police officer, and I thought, oh wait, I see. I don't know if that's like a layer behind it, because I see he's the only person who kind of tried to help Edward out even after he did the bad, essentially. And it's I kind of see why. And it's that's
Exactly.
Yeah,
I didn't think that up until this time. I was like, oh, actually, that's really interesting. The only person of colour in the film is the one that kind of gives Edward the break for it right at the end, like Corey mentioned.
Yeah, it was again, when I watched it when I was younger, didn't really know. I knew that the ending was a bit kind of melancholic, right? I was like, oh, it wasn't exactly a happy ending, but it was happy enough for them, and I was like, that's okay. Even young me was like, wasn't the best ending for them, but as long as they're happy and it snowed, it's fine. It's a Christmas movie to a certain point, I guess.
Exactly. When is it happy and it snowed?
Young version B is like, hey, it's snowing. That's like the happiest moment. No one cares what else happens. Oh, is the world falling apart? It's like, oh, it's snowing. It's fine. Okay, yeah. So yeah, generally speaking, it was better in my memory. The creaks and cracks are showing looking at it now, but it's just it's not the greatest, but it's quite good. It's quite nice still.
No, that's good. I'll take that, Simon.
Okay, now let's see how.
Well, technically, Camilla actually rated it higher than you, Simon, and then it's you, and then it's Pat, and then it's Ali.
Okay.
No, that's manual Pat, then Ali.
It's like a James Bond thing, and it just lowered him toward the piranhas.
Yeah, it's literally just the red laser's just coming right up to the groin.
Expect me to talk? No, I expect you to
die.
Okay.
No, you should have said Mr. Scissorhands.
Oh, damn it! Yes, that's true. Okay. So
if Camilla's there, she may speak.
Hello. I'm here. Yeah, I was going to say, and Simon was just about to hand over to the people who rated it badly. I was like, no, I'm next. I like Rachel. I've never seen this film before, technically. So it's been on TV a few times when I've been like flicking through it, and I've seen pockets of it, but I've never really understood what was going on. And I wasn't really looking forward to watching it either. I was kind of dragging my feet on it. But I enjoyed it. I thought it was a really nice film. I had a bit of a different take to what other people have mentioned in terms of the whole kind of outsider thing, because all the way through, well, not all the way through, but when Jim decided to use him to break into his house, it reminded me of something I heard in a podcast. It's this podcast called Ologies, and for Disability Awareness Month, she did an interview with a disability activist who said the thing with a lot of disabilities is it's not a problem until somebody else makes it a problem. We're just kind of trying to live our lives, and that's kind of what I felt with Edward, because like he had made such an impact in the community, he'd made such a splash. Everyone loved him, and it was all good. And then somebody realized that they can exploit him, and the only reason he agreed to it, as we come to understand, is because like he fancies, I want to say Pam, but I don't know that was her name, Winona Ryder's character. But yeah, I just kind of felt like he has this thing that can be used to for somebody else's gain, and then when that all goes badly, then he's scapegoated, and then gradually people kind of start to turn against him. And it really annoyed me, the kind of mob mentality of the women in that community. Like it was like everybody needs like something else to do. And it's really funny that the only one who had anything better to do with her time was the one who was also in the MLM. So yeah, me being unlike myself will advocate for people being in MLMs if it stops you from being a gossipy, miserable person.
You might have to explain a little bit about what MLM means, just in case.
Oh, if no one knows what an MLM is, that's multi-level marketing. So that's like Avon and Mary Kay, or some of the newer ones like Monet and Beachbody, which then became Body, and they've got that kind of you make money not only by selling the product or service, but also by recruiting people. You predominantly make money by recruiting people, and it's just quite predatory in nature. But there's a lot of, especially in America, stay-at-home mums in like the Bible Belt and Mormon communities who are in MLMs. So yeah, the kind of your stay-at-home mum with nothing to do joining an MLM thing is yeah, it's just there's a YouTube channel that we watch, which is why it made me think of that.
And
But back,
just to add to that, when she was saying, "Oh, the head of the company, she's so great. She worked from the bottom and blah blah blah. She's all the way at the top." As a context, most MLM companies, like Camilla was saying, was predatory. It's around about 90 something, 90 to, is it 80 to 90%? Or around about
something like
90% of
that.
people are usually at the bottom of the pyramid, because they are pyramid schemes, making less than minimum wage every year. So messed up.
But the dream is that like you can recruit loads of people, and then like you're going to move higher up the pyramid and blah 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 blah. But it's a numbers game, so the more people there are in the company, the less you can move up. But anyway, back to the film. I forgot what I was going to say now. I enjoyed it. I hated Jim. He is like textbook beginning to be abusive boyfriend. Even his friends take advantage. And it really annoyed me that the community didn't see that side of him enough. Like, yeah, he gets his comeuppance, he dies, but he doesn't properly get his comeuppance from the community, which was a shame. And agree with what everyone was saying about it kind of being like a fairy tale. But then it was better for not having a fairy tale ending, which I totally agree with. But I just didn't like how at the end she said, sorry if anyone can hear our washing machine. We literally just got back from being away for a week. Um, they, anyway, But I didn't like how she said, "Oh, I didn't want him to. I want him to remember me as I was." I just thought that was a bit of a rubbish line. Um, as Noah, I feel like her reason for not wanting to see him after all that time was a little bit weak, even though I agree with the decision to not see him. Um, and yeah, I think that's it because I've kind of forgotten most of what I was going to say. So yeah, it's time for the negative people to start. I don't know who's next.
I believe it's Emmanuel.
Yeah. I was just reaching over to unmute.
But to be fair, your score wasn't that bad. I was like, oh, it's going to put it through the floor. It's actually like quite good for an Emmanuel score. It's good. It's just the enjoyment that's the kind of like, oh, it's a shame.
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
All right. So let me also double check. Anyway, so I'll say the positive things first, and also maybe one or two things that Camilla wanted to say but forgot about. So, in terms of aesthetics and how the film was, she said it best. It's very much in a world similar to Pushing Daisies. For anyone who's seen that, it's very much just out there. It's based off of our world, but it's not in any real time. It has this kind of pastel, kind of almost fantasy-like aesthetic. For anyone who hasn't seen it, I was thinking it's not as goofy as like a live action Cat in the Hat, but it's also, it doesn't feel like, oh, it's based in our reality, more in our reality like Ghostbusters. It's somewhere in between.
Yeah,
somewhere in between Ghostbusters and Cat in the
Hat. It is really good. It is so much better than what you might think. It's kind of it's this weird aesthetic that
it's walking the tightrope.
Yeah, to say he kept saying "Cat in the Hat," and I very much.
I know what he means. Yeah, it's this Dr. Seuss aesthetic, like the Grinch.
Yeah, but when I kept thinking of Pushing Daisies because the music is also very similar to Pushing Daisies. Like some of the sound, some of the music in the film, I can imagine it being in Pushing Daisies, and in a similar way, like the colors are very saturated. But then there's also loads of pastels, and then Anna Friel is kind of the female lead, and she, especially in the second season and towards the first one's only 9 episodes long, but her wardrobe is a lot more late 50s, early 60s, and Kristen Chenoweth's wardrobe is kind of more mid 60s. So it has the same vibe and feel to it, and in my head it exists in the same universe, just maybe the next town over or something. Because it's also got that weird like geographical element where it's like I don't know where the main town is supposed to be, but also like this dark hilly mountain with snow on it also makes no sense, which is a thing that you find in Pushing Daisies. Sorry to interrupt Manuel there.
You're 100%. Yeah, you're 100% right. It could live on the same street or this next intersection and next to obviously the Blue Velvet Town. It's all connected. All these weird like quirky 1960s, 50s kind of thing, but they're not. They're kind of really strange than that.
Definitely.
Yeah, good show. I love that.
Thank you. And yeah, that's fine because I thought you was going to talk about that because you know much more about it than me. And also one of the other things Camilla told me about, I was just like, oh yeah, I don't know why I didn't realize that. The kind of beauty and the beast of it near the end, it was very much like Beauty and the Beast. She comes back to save him because she knows the town's coming for him, but Gaston, the really abusive, obnoxious, self-righteous, whatever one who wants to be with this lady, ends up getting killed. Just like him falling out of a window or off the roof or something like that.
Yeah, he has the showdown, the big fight,
off the roof.
and she falls to his death. You're right.
I didn't realize that.
And they came out around the same time. I think it was literally. Was it the same year? It might have been a year afterwards.
I think it was the same year. It was. I think it came out in 1990 in America and 91 over here.
Wow, yeah,
But
actually.
yeah, they're very much like the same era when it like time period when it was being made.
And obviously, Beauty and the
This
Beast
Beauty
is
and the
older.
Beast is 1991, so
91. So yeah, so the Disney version 91, and obviously the story of Beauty and the Beast is quite an old story, like based on like this old legendary fairy tale from like the 1700s. But obviously the Gaston character, I think, was more of a Disney invention. So there's a lot of like similar things going around, and obviously I can see maybe they'll. Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, I was thinking that the Beauty and the Beast similarities is something I was going to mention later as well, and obviously Frankenstein too. But you're right; it has that parallel of just this monster being shunned and this abusive boyfriend going out thinking he's the macho one to save the day. In fact, he's not, and kind of like gets his comeuppance in a sense. But I think even like with Beauty and the Beast, Gaston and what's his name? Anthony Michael Hall's character. Neither of them, like you mentioned, neither of them actually kind of like are revealed to be the shysters they are, which is a shame, like you guys said. So that's one sad thing. And
yeah,
Ed takes the fall.
They both have huge parallels. Ugh. I don't like Gaston, obviously, and I don't like that boyfriend. And like the most frustrating thing about it all is like they're like kind of deluded. Like they're trying to save Belle, they're trying to save Kim, but they really just care about their ego. They don't really truly care about.
Yeah, and none of them are listening to Belle or Kim. They're just doing what they think is right. And it's like, listen to Kim, listen to Belle. This is what she doesn't want this. But anyway.
Yeah. The boyfriend literally hit Kim. Like that was just like, wow, you do deserve to die. Bye.
Yeah, and to also, what you call it, as a random one about the boyfriend before I talk about the other stuff. He made me think of a young Steve Martin's character in Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah,
like the look he gave when he walked away from what's her name again? Kim. Yes, Kim. Yeah, the look he gave, I was just like, that's a messed up look. That's a guy who will easily just kill someone and not really care. Like if it means that it will go his way. And it just made me think of like, oh, Steve Martin's kind of like the older version of him, who's done this many times and is very abusive or is shown to be very abusive. It's like even his friends was just like, maybe she's right, you know? He's like, shut up and drive. It's just like, yeah, I don't know. I know obviously his Steve Martin character is very far along and very far gone, but it just made me think of that.
Yeah, his what he'd become if he didn't die.
Yeah. But I'll say some positive things before I say the kind of things that annoy me. But I think so. In general, I was actually. Let me start it this way first. It made me laugh the kind of Avon placement, like product placement in it, in the classic MLM lines that you will hear in kind of attitudes in many different kind of things even till now. And even the way she was like, oh yeah, she won't let nothing stop her except that lady who's playing the organ. Actually, you know what? Yeah, no. But that random creepy house probably won't buy anything. But I will go up anyway. In this kind of endless optimism that, yeah, you know, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be good. I could do this and do this, and it's very much a lot of how they're taught to be in those companies, unless they deprogram themselves. So I found that funny that was in there, and it was so like factual to how it is real life with everything else that's kind of like fantasy and kind of a bit real, a bit not real. This was just exactly how it is. So that was kind of funny. I did like the policeman, the black policeman is kind of worry about Edward as well. But yeah, other than that, I was looking forward to watching this because it's been on my list for a long time, and I thought I watched it, but I realized I only watched bits and pieces of it, similar to Camilla. But so many characters just really annoyed me. Or like annoyed me, pissed me off, because like I guess it's one of those things where for many people, like Camilla, Corey, many people, like they might be like, oh yeah, I really hated that character. I really hated this character. I really didn't like the kind of almost medieval town vibes of we're getting our pitchforks and we're gonna do a witch hunt against the one that's really weird and that might bring some bad luck and kind of whatever to the our village and fortune, whatever. We're gonna go after them and kill them because they're not one of us anymore, kind of thing. For some, that doesn't necessarily outweigh the other parts, but for me, it did because it was just constant, and there was just even when the mom was trying to be nice. Okay, she was very naive. She didn't go and bring him to someone professional. First off, it's like, or think to bring him to someone professional. It's like, we'll bring him to my house and he will stay in my house. It's like, but this guy, kid, whatever, she might not realize this, and they realize this more later on. He's basically like, in real life, like a feral child in a way. He's been raised to a point and then left on his own. He has not been socialized. He has not been taught so many things. Yet, even when the kind of mom realizes that, she doesn't think, well, I say think, she doesn't take action on maybe I should get some proper professional help. Or, sorry, I'm not cussing it too much in this part. By the way, it's just some of my thoughts. And, like, though saying that, the only thing I was really disappointed by was that she came to the realization that she was naive. But then she was like, yeah, maybe the best thing is just to leave him by himself. It's like, wait, no. That's not where you're meant to go with this train of thought. You've realized one thing. I'm like, finally, you get it. Wait, no. What? And then, besides all the other really annoying people, and the kind of strange scenes with obviously Joyce trying to basically rape him, but then saying he raped her. I mean, I guess that can happen, but she also seemed like there was other things going on. More specifically, not in a bad way, but I think she had something similar to. I can't think of the proper condition names, but it's like a nymphomaniac type condition where even certain sensations or driving in a car can give you an orgasm. Though in real life that is not pleasant for those people, and I really feel for them. But anyway,
you really feel for
you had. Yeah. If you've listened to some of their stories, it's just like anyway, not going down that route. Sorry. But yeah, there's so many people are just like, oh for goodness, so annoying me. And then the Kim who's like, I love you kind of thing. And it's like, cool. You really care about him. Cool. Wait, you've never gone to see this guy in like 60 freaking what? I wasn't looking for a fairy tale ending. I didn't think there would be any fairy tale ending. In fact, we thought it was more likely that he'd get shot by the police or end up dead at some point. To be honest, that would probably be quite realistic in America these days. But like, and that I probably would have been fine with. But she actually cares about him, and I have expected her to at some point be like, you know what? I want to, maybe even if it's after a few years, I want to go away with this guy because I can't take that is what he will be subject to for a rest of however he exists. I want to go somewhere and live with him. Maybe we can live a quiet life or whatever. It's not necessarily happy, but it's better than what he's doing. And I know the mom would be supportive, and I'm sure even though the dad is kind of blasé and kind of trained himself, I'm sure like the family would be behind it. And to be honest, they probably visit her and him from time to time, even if eventually they split and left. They all just thought, oh yeah, it's better to leave the basically feral child by themselves and can barely even feed themselves. I'm just like, you know what? It's just like the icing on the cake, huh?
Forever and ever, basically.
Yeah, it was just kind of like the icing on the cake with everything. Though, even though I liked how certain people were just very accepting or treated him or didn't try to point out his differences or whatever it was. Yeah, they weren't also trying to accommodate, which, like other people said, there's many things in the film that reflect to real life, or kind of metaphors of real life. But yeah, it's while you have many people that will react in those kind of ways in real life or in the past and whatnot. Yeah, it's just, of course, it's still not enjoyable to watch, and it just annoys me. It makes me want to turn it off.
That's a good point. I just want to add to what Manuel was saying. Is like, yeah, that part I think we've all mentioned is like, yeah, it is a real kind of like, oh, did she really have to kind of like not see him again and just go as an old woman? But I think the only glimmer of hope, and I think all I would have done is change the dialogue there, is that the fact that she stays near like the castle, she still lives there as an old woman, and her granddaughter comes and lives there too. So she's still near enough to him. So it's kind of like she could just see him every weekend and for the rest of her life, and that'd be fine. He doesn't need to leave the castle. No one else needs
This is wow.
All she could have said.
Me.
Yeah, all she had to try and tweak dialogue, change to be like, oh, but we say we don't see him. I've never seen him, but wink, wink. Maybe I have been, kind of thing. Something like that. Where she could have just had like this moment.
I wouldn't have wanted that. I think
keep him safe, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the thing about her not seeing him is really nice. Like, I think it's a complicated thing, isn't it? Because like that whole thing happened because he came down from his castle, and it's like, well, you can see how she wants to make a decision to keep him safe and also to keep herself safe. Because if her whole town has like sworn him off as this awful person, like you can say maybe she should have been stronger or whatever, but you can see why she wouldn't have been. And then it moves quick, man. Like, and before you know it, you're an old woman, and you don't want him to see what you've become. You want him to keep the image of what you were. I completely get that.
Yeah.
I think there's an idea of like hope for maybe like her telling her granddaughter. I think there's that kind of, for me, there's hope of like, he's never gonna change. He's always gonna be there, and maybe your future generation, he will, there's hope in a way. Like, I think kind of
she can break the circle, maybe the granddaughter
better, and then it's kind of like society or the communities there will die out with the grandmother.
Sorry, but it kind of is different. Oh,
Manuel's frozen.
Oh no.
Rachel, did you want?
While he's paused, I just want to say I really like that read on it, Rachel. That like there could be a time where Edwin can like potentially be accepted and treated well.
Yeah, I think so. Society changes, and like I said, you wouldn't tell your granddaughter, that story without, like, you wouldn't tell her the truth and give the indication that you were that person if you weren't. Like, I don't know. I just kind of felt like she could have very easily kept it as not revealing that girl was her in the story, and I think there's that like holding out hope for things potentially being different with her knowing, because he's never gonna grow old or die necessarily unless he's killed, and so yeah, like future generations do better, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
I'm through my headphones.
If it stopped at one point, just let me know. But you've reminded me of a few other problems I had with Kim specifically. So the smallest thing is, okay, you didn't see him at all when he's that close. Like Ben was saying, you also kind of reminds me of Fiona. You can't accept how you look when I'm sure you know that guy. It's kind of like he's not Shrek. Don't get me wrong, but in terms of being really accepting, one mo-
You can say something else.
Yeah, while you're muted, man, I don't think it was supposed to be like a literal kind of I'm an old woman, so I don't want him to see me as an old woman. Like I think it was more like it's like what I was saying about time moving fast. Like I get the impression that it was more along the lines of like, all of this stuff has happened. You couldn't bring yourself to see him in this whole time, and now the passage of time means that you're a visibly different person. And it's not that she's not accepting of who she is; it's that she's different to what he knows her as.
Mm.
And I think that's what she was struggling to accept, is that maybe she regretted not seeing him. Like I don't think it was just as simple as going, "I'm old now, so I don't want him to see me."
Mm. But also, I think there's that like risk of, do you see him and remind him that actually does it hurt him again, knowing that she's not going to live forever, right? She's going to eventually like die, and so I don't know, like why would you again kind of hurt him? He's still going to end up lonely either way, right? He's going to end up on his own either way, so kind of why prolong that or make it worse, kind of thing, and having a fulfilling like a relationship. Actually, she's going to die, so keeping her distance felt like the most kind of like the ultimate, I don't know, like sacrifice, I guess, in order to protect him in kind of more ways, I think, than one. Yeah.
What I would say. Oh, sorry.
I'll just quickly say, I was thinking I could just see, Rob, you said when you figured out that like maybe Edward Scissorhands is immortal and he doesn't age like everybody else, and that maybe made you cry more. I understood that because that would add an element of another element of loneliness for him, because like if he ever did connect to somebody, they would die and he would like continually lose people because he just isn't.
Yeah, and that happened to the Eventer guy, right? As well, right? He got old and he died. So.
What I would say, this is a whole interesting conversation itself. While again, this was my smallest part. It wasn't the main issues I had with Kim that I'll come into afterwards. But so there's two things it makes me think of. In the initial thing, one of the things I thought of first off, because we watched Home Alone recently, was the conversation where Kevin was just like, "Well, just call him." Like, it'd be best just to get out of the way, and if he rejects you, well, like at least you don't have to worry about it. And he was just like, you've got that side of it, and then the other kind of side of things you're talking about. In sorry that I can't think of a better example. Someone else could probably, but it kind of makes me think of the kind of immortality vampire kind of conundrum where do you make friends and make connections with mortals, or do you live a basically completely solitary life for pretty much the most of time? What's worse, never experiencing true happiness or experiencing happiness and the sadness that comes with it? And that's more of a theological kind of thing. And while I get for some people, they might feel that, oh, it'll be better if I spare him from that heartache. But then, and again, everyone's different. If I was in a situation of like being immortal, I'd rather make connections and kind of care for that person until they get old and watch them die, and have my own peace in that, rather than not being able, even though he got to know love, even if it was very briefly, he could experience more of it, but it seems like it's even worse. It's, I don't know if that makes sense at all.
No, I get it. It's similar to what like the Doctor Who series goes through. It's just like he's immortal. He kind of like lives thousands of years and goes through. He makes so many friendships and meets so many companions, and it's just like they all end. Not all of them end in heartbreak, but most of them do. It's just one of those things that the inevitability of being like immortal, in which Ed is, and it's there's kind of like one thing to bring up before we move on is that I interpreted that Edward obviously is more like a Pinocchio type character. He appears to be human-ish, but he's not really meant to be. He's supposed to be an automaton. He's supposed to be made from metal and cogs, and he's just kind of like this humanoid type robot that looks, acts, and breathes like he's human. He can eat things and stuff, but he's not really flesh and bone. He's like a replicant from Blade Runner. He's not real, and he will live forever. And that's how he's lived in that castle. And I thought that castle and the inventor could have been like centuries ago. It could have been like in like the 1300s, and he's been in that castle for so long. And he could have gone out and met someone else before. There could have been someone that he had seen before the events of this film. And it could happen again. He could just go on this cycle of this meeting people, being shunned, going back to the castle. It's just this never-ending cycle or repeat kind of thing. So that's why
Eat, sleep, get shunned, repeat. Eat, sleep,
it is
get shunned,
exactly.
repeat.
And he's got on his little chimney thing. Eat, sleep, shun, repeat. That's the thing. He doesn't really need to eat to live. He just exists, and he knows what he knows. And that's the curse of his immortality.
You know what? I didn't really delve deep into thinking of this element of the story of how because I guess maybe because it comes in near the end that it seems like he could be immortal and thus have like the whole problem of deciding whether he wants to connect to people that are just gonna he's gonna outlive time and time again. But this is really fascinating because like we could each relate to somebody like that in the sense that, a huge life lesson that I've learned is that like most things come to an end. Nothing is guaranteed to stay around forever. And so like I have to make a decision for myself. Like I've realized, when I've come into something really, really good, it's bittersweet for me because I know that, it could in time change or I could lose it for one reason or another. So I think like I have to decide for myself, like, is it worth the pain to connect and feel really big happiness and goodness, knowing that as on the flip side, I'm going to feel big loss and pain to lose it. So I just I never realized the parallel of just like, even though we're not immortal, we still have to make that decision.
I think there's also kind of still a comment. I haven't quite figured it out properly in my head, but I think there's also something to say around like the fact that if he is immortal, actually the only thing that is dangerous to him is others, and it's others like are humans, and in a way, like actually he's not a danger to himself, and actually the thing that could kill him, like, is an attack from people that despise him or are scared of him or fearful of him. And I think that's, I don't know, just something interesting to kind of keep in mind, perhaps, that maybe that's a commentary like within itself, that actually he's safe there and he can keep on living, but actually he's at his biggest risk seeking out that connection from other people because people are not accepting and people aren't kind. And I think that's quite important.
I think there's also a reading that maybe he did die when the roof caved in. Like, just because she's telling the story of him being alive doesn't mean he actually is. And maybe that was the end of Edward, but for this old woman who made a connection with him when he was young, maybe it's less painful for her that he's still alive up there, and every time it snows, why can't it be him?
Deep.
So it's...
I mean, We have that as well. It's yeah, that's true. Sorry, Ben, were you going to say something before I
I was
changed?
going to say, shall I pull the band-aid off and let Alec and Pat speak? Because they'll
Okay.
want to have their thoughts before it's too late.
Oh, sorry. I'll say these 2 quick points before I pass on. And maybe they're things that you also
It'll be the same.
had problems with. With Kim, my main problems with her was that she, as much as she cared about the injustice that was happening against him, she never spoke up. She never once, and even her abusive boyfriend said it to her very early on. Well, I wasn't the only one. You were there. Why haven't you said anything?
Yeah.
And it's just like, and she never opens her mouth. Not even tries. It would be different if she tried and people were just like, "Oh, you're just trying to protect him." Fair enough, that's right. She didn't even try, and that's my problem with her. And then
she realizes too late.
Yeah, and then she realizes and then this one I'm not sure as much, so other people can come in on this one, but before Kevin almost got run over by a douchebag, or the douchebags, they both came out the house, and he said, "Kevin," and I thought she also saw, like, they both saw the same view from the door. She saw that he was going to save Kevin, which is also why she's kind of trying to go over to save him from the other people, and it kind of also help diffuse the situation. But she again never says anything. And while the mom, she has like 1 or 2 occasions where she could have said things. Because of her character, I kind of let it pass a little bit because I'm just like, yeah, she's not the most realistic kind of best person to be dealing with some of these situations. But Kim, you're not naive. You're not delusional in any way. But if you actually love him or really care for him that much, why did you not once? You will physically do the things. You will even say, yeah, he's dead. You'll make a story, like really like protect him, but you won't say something that might implicate yourself. So, is it truly love?
I think that can play into the whole thing of her not seeing him as well, right? Because that could be part of the character's regret, and then that plays into why you wouldn't go and see somebody because you think you are a part of this whole angry mob chasing him up a hill. So it's like I think I wouldn't want to say it's a flaw in the film that a character's weak-willed.
Oh no, it's not a flaw in the film. Sorry, this is why I thought I rated it pretty decently on some parts. It was just my annoyance with the character and frustration.
Yeah, I can understand like a frustration with like on one hand, I expect and hope that protagonists won't be like too perfect, too like I want them to have some flaws. But I can understand being frustrated by some of them and being disappointed. So, and like most of what knocked out my enjoyment score down just a little bit was my frustration with the antagonist, like the a-holes in this movie. So, but I understand where you're coming from, Emmanuel.
Thanks. Sorry. Pat. Is it Pat then Alec?
Yeah.
Yeah, Pat was kind of.
It was shit, wasn't it? No. So,
But the first time they agree.
I think
That was just a bit sharp, a bit mean, right?
Alec and Pat on the same team.
Yeah.
I must say, I think I don't know. It's there's a lot of thoughts, but
Wasn't that bad? Wasn't that bad?
I think a lot of my issues with it stem from most of the characters being horrible. Like even when you stem to the Avon woman, like when she finds him, she decides she needs to sell stuff, so she goes and she's like, oh, there's a big dark house up there, I'll go and check that out. She just walks in the front door and takes him. And I'm like, well, that's a bit dodgy there. So I was like, okay.
You sound like a kidnapping.
I should apologise.
I mean, it kind of is a bit.
So, and I think she sees this guy that's obviously not the, without fucking making it fun, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. And takes him into the town, knowing that every other person in that town is nosy and sort of basically used him as show and tell, and then they used him to fucking carve sculptures out of their trees, and they're basically all using him for what they can get out of him for free as well. So they're all a bunch of freeloaders. Until he's not suiting them, and then it's pitchforks time. And I'm like, these people are horrendous people. I'm like, I felt sorry for Edward, but I'm like, I just don't know what you can take out of the film. Like that, there's just too much bad in every person. Even like that woman that brought him down there in the first place. I thought she should have just left him where he was. But in terms of I can't remember who it was that said it earlier, was he immortal? I mean, he probably would be. He's basically an android, isn't he? Of some kind. Like, he's not human.
Yeah.
So, unless the roof caved in and crushed his skull and whatnot, he's going to be alive there for the next 10 plus generations. He doesn't need to eat. I mean, I don't know how he's going to eat anyway with those things growing out of his hands.
He did manage to work his mouth, to be fair.
With great difficulty.
But he did it.
But I've always struggled to, like, why this film was so popular. Like, I get it, people love it, and I always put it down to the fact that people have like that infatuation with Johnny Depp. I mean, like, I can understand that, but I just think it was one of Tim Burton's weakest films. Didn't really do anything for me. Like, visually, it looks really nice, and I think you see it in some of his later films. And I love the soundtrack. Danny Elfman is one of the great composers of our time, anyway. So, in my enjoyment score of 2, it's basically the music. As much as I hate it, or I think hate is probably a bit strong, as much as I dislike it, it's not like a complete waste of time. Because I sort of sat there, I'm trying to dissect it, and I'm like, trying to find something that I can really latch onto in the film. Like, there was the odd funny bit in it, which I'll say for my favourite scene, but largely, it's just not for me. Not a waste of time, but not for me.
That's fair enough.
I mean, what you described as like the reason why you don't like it, about like how everyone treats him and that kind of stuff, like that to me is what makes it meaningful. Like, it's That's your way in of relating to Edward and sort of, putting real life things onto Edward.
Well, you know how you've said before in certain films that they're mean spirited, and you don't like
No,
them
this
for.
isn't mean spirited.
I felt mean spirited throughout the film.
No, it's not, because when I say a film is mean spirited, I mean it feels like the film is like mocking someone or something, or it's doing something at the expense of someone. Whereas I think this, like, it's showing people being mean to Edward, but the idea is that you relate to Edward and you think about things in a different way. I don't think any particular person is the butt of the joke in the film.
Yeah.
I think we'll agree to disagree on that one. I thought they took advantage of him. Which
that's the idea.
That's the point.
Yeah, that's the story. Like that's the idea is that the way that they're treating him is the way that people are treated in real life when they have a difference. Like that's how you relate to Edward.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's
build empathy for his character in a situation as an audience.
I can see how could see Edward Scissorhands being bloody Freddy Krueger.
I mean, there is that similarity. That I mean, obviously, the the digits have that similarity, but they're both kind of like have this like they come and they get shunned for being different. One takes a different approach to it, the other does not. So yeah. But I suppose
an allegory for Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Yeah, I suppose my reading of it was that with something like Edward's, with feeling sorry for him and stuff like that, it's more to the fact that Edward still is this positive influence to the town when everyone else is kind of in this mundane, commercialized lifestyle. That's everyone's trying to copy everyone else and do this and that. Where Oda comes in and everyone's like, actually, he's doing something different. He's bringing something in. I think that's what I love about it, is that he brings out the best of everyone, and they don't realize that. And only kind of really like Peg and Kim really find out too late what he meant, and that's the kind of the tragic thing about it all. Yeah.
I think as we've been talking, I think I've realised why the ending did make me be a bit blubby. Is I think because if you do take it as literal and he is still alive and he's still up there doing his ice sculptures and all that kind of stuff, it's like time's moved on for everyone else, but like he's still taken so much from that town, even though they ran him out of it. And he's still doing like the things that he did for them, for himself, and yeah, I think that's really sad as well.
Yeah, and ultimately, it just shows you how much, as Pat would say, how humans suck. And Edward realizes that, and obviously, yeah, he may be better off in the castle doing his thing. But the empathy he did encounter, even if it was brief, was enough to kind of shape him as a better person himself. And it's a shame that he can't really be accepted in the rest of the town, no matter what time period it is, whether it's 1800s, whether it's the 50s, whether it's the modern day, he is still going to get shunned in the same sort of way. And that's kind of the bit of sweetness about it all. And there's like, oh, that sucks before him. But he never got corrupted by it. He never became worse. He never took his vengeance out on anyone. And other characters probably would do that, like a Freddy Krueger type. But yeah, Edward never did that. He just wanted to be left alone and be himself, and he just wanted to be loved, I suppose. That's the reason why I like the film, is that he just wanted to be accepted for who he was.
He did take some anger out on that bathroom.
He did. Innocent bathroom. Jesus.
That was scary for me. That was complicated to see him like lose control of his emotions like that, and he's got scissors for hands. So
if he was evil, if those powers were for evil, then yeah, he would be a Freddy Krueger type. There would be danger, and everyone's fears for him would be justified. But he never crosses that line, really. I mean, the only thing is that he does kill what's his face, the anti Michael Hall. But that was more of a like he was defending himself. That wasn't straight up murder. He just was like, "Yeah, just get away from me. I don't want to fight you. Go away, right?" And just happens to kill him with the hands, and he pushes him out the window. It's just, it isn't technically murder per se. Obviously,
well, yeah. And he wasn't just defending himself. Like, he was, I think what pushed him over the edge to kill him is he hit Kim and kicked her away.
It was self-defense and protecting her.
Yeah.
So it's all complicated and nuanced.
I didn't like seeing that side of him. Like, I guess like it's a natural human thing. Like when he wrecked the bathroom, it was after he saw that boyfriend come and meet Kim, and he didn't stay around long enough to see that she was like mad at the boyfriend and sent him away. But yeah, from my read on that, he was just like really like frustrated with her and for still being with that boyfriend, I guess. But yeah, that was.
Well, I took it as the anger being towards him rather than her.
Yeah,
towards the boyfriend rather than towards Kim.
Yeah, same. I also thought at the end of the day he's very much just throwing a tantrum. He is a child at the end of the day. Mentality wise, he's throwing a tantrum. He literally even walked out and was just like a kid, doesn't know what to do with this anger and this frustration. But at least he was not doing it to the guy himself. Even though he deserved it, he was taking it out on other stuff that wasn't people because he still valued human life.
Yeah, he was never like a threat to anybody kind of else, and he kind of still had that I don't say emotional maturity, but the idea of actually, not to fall into that kind of I don't know, like scapegoat or role. I think that was quite important. Actually, that he never really was a threat, even though he was kind of, I think maybe some of the words like being exploited is maybe more appropriate, Pat, in terms of some of the things that you were saying. But yeah, he never kind of once was really a threat to the people, even at his own kind of frustration or loss of control of his emotions as well.
Well, I think that was a really nice bit of characterization as well, though, is because like obviously he spent his whole life in this hill and he doesn't really know anything about like sort of real life, but he does know the difference between something that matters and something that doesn't. So like he'll rip up somebody's curtains and like puncture somebody's tire and all that kind of stuff, because that stuff's like, it's material, it doesn't, like, he's got no feelings, so he gives a shit. But as soon as the dog came and sat next to him, he cut away the fur so he could see again. And it's like, well, like, there is something about him, like, it's just that he doesn't put the importance on material things that we do. Like, it's...
Anyway, Alec, do you want to say your...
Oh, I thought he'd never ask. Shit, wasn't it? No. Yeah, really, I don't know whether he was... I don't know whether I was in his head for this one, because I feel like every part of it was designed to irritate me and annoy me and make me feel a bit ill. But
you're just replaying Pee-wee.
Yeah, it is just Pee-wee. No, it was just everything. Just any scene where a character is being force-fed food before they've even finished the mouthful they're on, like really just engages my gag reflex. I really can't. It's just horrible. I'm really over the whole. I realized this was like his third film.
I think this is fourth. Pee-wee, Beetlejuice, Batman, Edward Scissorhands.
Oh, if we said that man.
Batman versus Superman. What's the fuck going on?
Pee-wee Herman, Edward Scissorhands, that man. Yeah, I was really over like the whole it's the Tim Burton aesthetic. He's in a castle on a spooky hill, and then you got oh look, it's suburbia. Everyone's got their house painted different colour. Isn't that weird and at odds with each other? I was just like, yeah, I get it. Oh.
Why have you turned German all of a sudden?
I was going for Bill Bailey, but that's fair.
Oh, I see it now.
Should be neat and tidy. Yeah, I don't know. I think I've said before on here. Like, I feel like I felt like, but without even seeing it, I felt like I knew what it was gonna be, and like, yeah, it kind of really, really, really was what I was expecting. Like, just I don't know. It's a Tim Burton. I'm gonna say it's like the Tim Burton playbook, but I'm also gonna say that I don't actually know like which one it directly correlates with. It's just I don't know. It's just all of them. I guess I went through his filmography and I was like, I don't know which one it is directly, which one it's directly correlating with, but like I don't know. I found all of it just like super off-putting. I found like just every angle, every frame, every color, every character design. I just went like, I hate it. I don't like Edward Scissorhands' like design whatsoever. I think it just everything about it makes me hate. I don't even like Vincent Price in the film, which I was extremely upset by. I was like, okay, Vincent Price is going to be here. That's fine, and I hated that as well. I found his. I mean, I'm usually like just so on board with his delivery. I was expecting like a Rattigan kind of delivery, but like.
He was admittedly very ill when he was filming this, so this is like one of the last films he did before he went into full retirement before he passed.
Yeah,
that explains it. Then I'll let him off. Just because he was dying. But yeah, I don't know. I found everything. I find Tim Burton really difficult because I find it just extremely on the nose, and there's just kind of like there's no. I don't think there's any like internal consistency. I think he just kind of wants to have a film about a bloke with scissors for hands, and it's like, why? And it's like, oh, the inventor was making cookies with his machine, and then they'd cut one in the shape of a heart, and he held it in front of an unrelated machine which looked a bit human-like. And I was like, oh, okay, we can kind of just do that with everything, can't we? Was he just prancing about with his heart cooking, going, oh, I can make that alive, actually. Well, I can make that alive, actually. Could be alive.
Well, I mean, like we were very similar to get Edward Scissorhands. We could have got like Johnny's stencil feet or Eric Fireface. It really could have been anything to be us.
Why not? Why not? Indeed. Why not make multiple? Fuck it. But yeah, and then it was just kind of stuff like, here's a physical comedy. He's in suburbia. He doesn't know what to do. We're gonna put him at a table, and then it's like the woman's. I don't know. I felt annoyed like that Peg had given him cutlery and just kind of gone. Here, you can go on with that. And I was just like, and he's going like, oh, and he's like clearly struggling. Clearly can't even get around holding a fork. Clearly can't pick anything up very easily, very politely. And I'm just like, why did you think this was a good idea? Why have you put Edward Scissorhands on the fucking waterbed of all places? Yep. Where do you put Edward Scissorhands?
Yep.
Two out of 4.
Like, they're naive, their kindness, but their kindness not being enough because they're not able to adapt to what he actually needs. I think that's really like, they're showing him kindness. She's not wanting to make him feel excluded by not giving him the knife and fork, and so therefore she's giving it to him, and how he chooses to manage at the table, I think, is obviously up to him, but I think it's her desire just to give him kindness and like naively not try to make him feel different. It's like those people that come into the world and say, oh, I don't see colour, and it's like, but you need to, because actually that's my like lived experience, or that's my truth, and actually if you're not adapting kind of how you are or considering that in your interactions with people, actually you're not recognising what makes them them. And I think that's what she's trying to do. She's trying to almost like not see what separates him by trying to include him, and that almost then not being suitable and kind of ableist, I guess, in a way, in terms of actually what he requires to kind of get by and manage. I think that is the point. that is the point of the film.
Totally
Yeah.
agree, Rachel.
Yeah,
Like I feel
but-
like she's trying to like compensate. She's trying to make sure she doesn't overcompensate. It's a bit
Yeah.
like when you've got like a little person or a dwarf or whatever
Yeah.
the term
Hey,
is,
it's a
and like
person of small.
and someone like picks them up, and it's like, no, don't pick me up. Get me a stool. Like help me in a way that's actually appropriate to my
accessible.
needs.
Yeah.
And don't preempt what my needs are by assuming because you present as X, Y, and Z, I'm going to assume you need to be treated like X, Y, and Z.
Mm.
Like
Yeah,
I
and
like
also-
that she's very inclusive of him, and I guess in the 90s it wasn't really much of the conversation, but obviously nowadays it is, when inclusivity is as much about it's more about justice than equality, where it's giving someone what's appropriate and needed for them, not just treating everybody exactly the same, as Rachel was saying, because then everyone's treated the same. Which is kind of why her kindness and generosity wasn't enough, because it was kind of lacking in a very serious way in terms of what actually are his needs or his wants. Like, what is his opinion? Like, you never hear her say his name is. You never hear him say Ed is fine or Eddie is fine, but she's correcting everybody. It's Edward, and it's like that's how he introduced himself. But maybe one of these other names is fine. Like, you've not given him the chance to speak and see his take on how his life should be lived, or even what he should be called now that he's got kind of
Savior
other
complex,
options
yeah.
available to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do agree that like the point of view that I was getting as a viewer is that I wasn't supposed to be thinking that the mother was doing the right thing. I very much got the sense that it was a flaw of hers in how she was trying to help Edward, and she says it herself later in the story that she got it wrong. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just basic things like put him on the waterbed, Mr. Spiky. Yeah, absolutely. Don't have Junior fucking sleep on the waterbed and put him somewhere where he can't damage anything very much. Like, no, just put him on like the most fragile piece of furniture in the house. We need to have some humour. And it's like, cool.
I don't
Really?
think it was humour though, man. I think the whole idea was this is an absurd thing to put him on, and of course this is the thing that's going to make him the bad guy because you put him there without considering what he might be able to do to it. Like I don't think it was just for humour.
Yeah, like for her, it's the idea of that's the kind of best place where Kim's out and she's away. That's the best temporary solution. You know that the other solution is, I think, the garage, which is obviously not separate from the house, but it's kind of like off the house. It's like, well, does that then exclude him by putting him there? Or actually, I don't think it's like I think that the kind of, not her naivety, but like her not thinking. She's just trying to do what she thinks is the right decision, but she's not really thinking through actually what are his needs, or this is impractical. It's like, actually, well, for her, this is maybe a better solution than putting him in the garage and making him feel like, I don't know, othered, and actually putting him in the room to be part of the family is important to her in terms of her kindness, but obviously, yeah, it isn't what he actually needs to have as a space.
Yeah, I just think like you look at him and you don't want him to be othered or anything, so you put him in a position where he's going to feel even more othered. And I get what you're saying. She's trying not to exclude him, but I'm just like, you're not exactly making it easy for him, like either. And you can just look at him. You can just look at him and go, "This is not suitable."
That is the idea, though, isn't it? Like that's the idea, is that she looks at him and she doesn't realise, in the same way that we all look at people and we don't realise. Like that's the whole idea.
Savior complex. You just want to help.
Yeah, otherwise, if she looked at him like me or you, she'd probably like she sees him like anyone else. She doesn't see him as this weirdo, this strange guy that's going to cause so many issues. If she did, she wouldn't have taken him from the castle, I suppose.
Yeah, but the things. Sorry.
And it's like another thing is like everyone would make a different a choice there. Everyone has their own version of what they would do, and it's like, yeah, I've made some stupidly dumb decisions sometimes off the fly. It was like, oh, we'll do this real quickly. Oh, actually, that's a fucking dumb decision. It's like after the fact it happens, then you realize, yeah, that's dumb. But it's kind of like it shows you her humanity and her flawlessness, and it foreshadows what happens in the rest of the film because she makes that fundamentally wrong decision of bringing Edward into the home from the start. She doesn't have the foresight of what he would do and what he could, because she has this innocence and this naivety of like, yeah, in an ideal world, he'll be embraced. My family's going to love him. The town's going to love him. He's going to be part of the family. He's going to feel loved. End of story. But life doesn't work like that. And she was just thinking, like, she in her head is like thinking of the fairy tale that this film it isn't really, but it is. And she's kind of like, yeah, I'm in this fairy tale. It's just that, but in her, everyone else is not in that fairy tale she's living in. She's kind of in her own little world of just like make believe and thinks like she's just a bit kooky and a bit silly, and she's like, yeah, oh, well, but yeah, it's just.
Well, I just to add to the point, I see it from both sides, or I get what both like sides of people are saying. What I found, I think, frustrating particularly was how and I know you've already said it very clear, she's in her own world, but it's to such a point, and very specifically, for example, when the dad wants to give him some alcohol, even though, yeah, kind of irresponsible, but whatever, that's the whole thing. He sees him struggling and then gives him a straw.
Yeah.
At the table, what I found very frustrating was that I guess she didn't see him struggling, but it's obvious that he's struggling.
She knows.
She doesn't.
She knows he's struggling because she's commenting on it. She's saying, "Kevin, can you stop looking? Can you stop staring at him?" And I'm like, "Can you?
Can you do something about it?"
No. It's like that's the whole point. That's the whole point. Because her way of compensating for him struggling is to say, "Don't look at it. Don't worry about it. He's all right. Like just leave him to it." But the dad's way of helping him with his struggling is to say, "Here's a straw." But her way is just to say, "Don't pay it any attention. He'll get on with it." It's just different characters. Like it's not a like that's the whole commentary.
I think it's a very relevant commentary to still what happens today, and I'm really glad it came up. The whole like somebody a person saying that they don't see color, and how like a type of inclusivity can be really not helpful when you're not trying to understand where the person you're trying to help is coming from, when you're just deciding for yourself what you think would be best for them. And so that's where where a failing of the mother is that she does have good intentions. She is caring and genuinely caring of Edward, but the way she tries to help him is not helpful. And we see that with like, and it's a common problem today with people who have like abilities and privileges that we need to be taught. We need to um listen to the people who have a harder time than us to learn, because we can't, it's not so easy as just looking at somebody and knowing intuitively what they need. We need to learn from them. And so like, and I understand she was coming from a good place to put him in her daughter's bedroom, like that to her was like a really symbolic, intimate way to like include him. But she didn't realize that a waterbed is not well made for a person with scissor hands. And when she sat him, and when she sat him at the dinner table, she wanted to include him, and she wanted him to feel part of everybody else by using the exact same cutlery. And again, we see it's not helpful for him. And I'm glad we see the different ways people are trying to help Edward, because I do think like the dad was more on the right track with just like seeing him struggle and being like, okay, let's try something different, and not make a big deal out of it. It doesn't have to be a big deal. But I think where a major shortcoming of most people, I don't think anybody really asked Edward like what he needed. So anyway, and this is just like, it's frustrating to see, but to me it rings so true of just like people being blind to like having blind spots of like, we're like of like ableism and like privilege and race and all that stuff. It's just like it's not something you can't just look at somebody and know in like immediately that what exactly they need. It's more complex than that.
But this is what I mean about it being on the nose, because these things that you guys are talking about are things that are not necessarily apparent to people, and these are things that are happening in someone's mind, or this is something that you don't necessarily understand. But this is why I feel like it breaks down a bit when you're dealing with the literal reality of the film, which is he's a man with fucking scissors for hands. You don't put him on the water pit.
No,
Like,
that's because it might not be obvious to you, but to the person who it is, it's very obvious. Like that's the whole idea.
It's not obvious to someone. Sorry.
Yeah, everyone has a different interpretation of things. That's the way things
that's true.
are, I suppose. And it's
But
just
like I'll just quickly say, like, being frustrated with her shortcomings as a person, as her in her character, to me isn't a weakness of the story. I mean, this is her character is ringing true to me as a real person in the real world.
Yeah, and many people are.
I'm not saying it's necessarily like. I'm not saying it's against character. I'm just kind of going like. Oh, I don't know. I kind of wish it manifested a bit less on the nosy. You know, like. I don't know. I just kind of wish it was like a little bit on the subtler side.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying in that, like, in particular the thing with the waterbed, it does feel it's a bit of a cheap laugh. It's kind of played cheaply for laughs, especially because when he initially pokes the bed and it starts leaking, but then it's like the following day and he's still asleep. He's like goes to sleep in the bed, and it's not till he comes home from camping that like there's the whole scene of it, like, you know, him like fully puncturing it and stuff. And granted, that's a bit silly, but then I think to Rob's point, as he said, that's kind of the whole point. That's the commentary of the film. The conversations that we're having about ableism or not making the appropriate accommodations to whatever the situation is, whether it's a racial thing or it's an ability thing or whatever it is, that film came out before, well, not everybody was born, but it came out the year before I was born, and yet it's a conversation that I'm in my 30s and I'm having with people. So I can only imagine that in 1990 it was, maybe it had to be on the nose because people didn't have any concept of, well, not didn't have any concept of, but people kind of needed to be told, hey, different people with different needs, you can't force them to just bend to what you think society or what you think people are supposed to do. Like, it's only that it's not been that long since like kids that are left-handed aren't forced to write with their right hand, or kids that have hearing loss or are deaf aren't being taught, like not taught sign language, as if like by forcing people into this is what everyone else is doing and we deem to be normal, so that's what you have to do. That will make them adapt better, like overcome their disabilities or their differences better. So I think, given that this would have been written in the 80s, I think it kind of, maybe it needs to be that on the nose to actually just to get people thinking. And I think if it was made in this day and age, maybe that approach wouldn't be made in that way, because I don't think today's audience needs to be told the same thing.
I think what you're saying is so true, right? Because like a real life example that made me think of is with Jimi Hendrix, right? So he was left-handed, but he had a right-handed guitar which was turned upside down because his dad refused to buy him a left-handed guitar. And so that's a similar thing, right? Like, it's very fucking obvious that he uses his left hand. Even then, his dad was going, "No, you're going to use a right-handed guitar." So it's the same thing. Like, I mean, you know, you can say that things are more subtle and less obvious now, but it's not always as black and white as that. Like, there has been times where things have been visible and like very obvious to see, and people haven't adapted to.
Well, I'm just very glad that Simon's suggestion of Johnny Fireface, he didn't put him down onto the kerosene bed, because, you know, Peg was a fucking menace, apparently. Just, yeah, right there. Go on, then. Fill your boots. But yeah, I think as well, just kind of like just stuff like when I'm hearing things like I really hated the gym, and it's like, yeah, he's kind of designed in a petri dish to be hated. Like there's no he's got no redeeming qualities whatsoever, or like you know, fuck. What was the other one I was just thinking of? There was another one where it was just like you just kind of like you just sort of designed to feel like one way unambiguously about a person, and it's just there, and it's just like, okay, great. Well, I don't feel like I'm putting in a lot of work here, like just to like engage with these characters at all. Like it's all just very, yep, Jim's a dickhead. And I'm like, yep, Jim is a dickhead. Bye. Like it just doesn't seem to be a lot of like work gone into it. Fuck, I'm really annoyed now. I just completely lost that.
I think that's fair that the characters are kind of
Oh, that was the other one. Sorry.
Binary. Either they're good or they're bad, and they're either all good or they're all bad. I think it's maybe only the town, how the kind of background characters whose names you don't know the name of, they kind of change a bit whether or not they're supposed to be received well or supposed to not be received well. But yeah, most characters are either very visibly it's very much tell and don't show with the how we're supposed to feel about people, which is I think that's a fair criticism.
What was that? Yeah, the one I was thinking of as well was the cop guy, and I was like, oh, he was nice to him, and I'm like, the cop is like singularly responsible for everyone chasing him because he doesn't stick around. He doesn't try and stop anyone getting up the hill. He doesn't try and get Edward anywhere where he can like actually protect him. He just kind of goes, he's fine up there in that castle, all alone. Nobody do anything. I'm not a cop though. Oh wait, I am. Anyway, bye bye. And he just fucks off, and everyone goes, "Oh, should we go and kill Edward?" And they go, "Yeah, all right." And it's like, maybe if you stuck around a bit, Mister Burt the cop, maybe none of that would have actually happened. Maybe Jim wouldn't have died. Maybe I don't know. Everyone would have just kind of fucked off and left him alone. But like, no, like you could have got him. I don't know. I feel like you should probably be trying to get him somewhere safe. I feel like in a police station, no one can actually like try and shoot him or try and like cave a fucking ceiling in on him. But because he just kind of went, hey, no. Anyway, bye. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, you just put Edward massively in danger there. Nice one.
You just reminded me. It feels kind of incongruent with his character. What he said before, he suggested such kind of worry about, but will he be fine out there? And the guy's like, yeah. And he still wasn't sure. And he's just like, look,
as long as no one tries to shoot him.
Yeah. And he said, obviously to Edward, like, if you ever need any help, just let me know, kind of thing. But he sees what's going on, and yeah, he does half a thing by being like, yeah, it's all done. Look, I shot. You don't know if I shot him or not, but it's done. Okay. But you don't try to get him somewhere else. Because you're worried, as a police officer, you're worried about both sides. You're worried about the people he could harm, but also him himself as that particular person. He's worried about both sides. But he only does half a job in trying to protect them. And with anyone else, that would have seemed like, oh, I mean, that's kind of nice for a cop. Cool. I mean, didn't even expect that. But because it's him specifically, it would make more sense if he actually, obviously it wouldn't work for the film, for the ending the way it is, but it would make more sense for his character to go, all right, let me get him out of here, drive him away, They will be like, "Oh yeah, he's arresting him," all blah blah blah, and then I'm gonna call that guy again to say, "Hey, can you actually get some professional help? We ain't sending him back out there. This ain't happening."
I mean,
I
that's
mean,
the
that's
idea as well. Like, it's what you
Oh.
said. The institution did half the job. Like, that's the idea.
Oh, this is the guy who's meant to be the fucking Samaritan who's like, "Hey, Edward, I really like you. You're really cool," and he's getting like praised for doing for just kind of going like, "Wait, no," and it's like.
I don't think you're supposed to praise him. Like, I think it's supposed to be that is that, you know, like somebody in a government institution did show a bit of care towards him, but ultimately he was still only able to do half a job. Like that I think that's supposed to be the point.
He wasn't able to do only half a job. He just kind of stopped giving a shit. He just walked off.
That's the kind of thing. It's like Edward can't look anywhere for help. Like nobody is actually nobody's doing what Edward needs him to do. Like that's the idea. Like it's
to me, it's also kind of like a proper homage and influence to the old monster movies of the 1920s and 30s, where like the law and did only so much, and then they kind of gave up. And obviously the cops saw him. Oh yeah, that's where he came from, the castle. He's better off there where he came from. And what his backhanded way has just been like, so that it's out of our hands. I'm not going to be the one to kill him because that's not right. But just if he goes back to where he came from, that's the status quo being set. We're going back to where we were. Everything can go back to normal. All is well. That's kind of the whole vibe of it, what they were trying to do, and not what the townsfolk probably really wanted. And that's kind of what that they're trying to do, and what like with America right now, they just want to keep the status quo locked in, and they don't want changes. They don't want they don't want things to outside influences messing up with the inside kind of like thing, the way it's always been theoretically. And that's kind of like a thing I was like, oh yeah, shit, they just don't want this little idyllic small town to be disrupted by Edward, so it's better that he goes the way he came, where he went back the way he came from. And that, yep, in an ideal world he would be taken into custody or prison, but as it's still a fantasy movie, like a live action Disney, to a lot of points, it's still like, yeah, he has to go back to his castle. It's like Beauty and the Beast. That's where he would be benefit to be left to his own devices in. And I suppose that was the theme I took from it, is that, yeah, you just leave them to what they do and back where they originate from. That's kind of what the townsfolk would want, and what he was trying to do is like, yeah, it's less cruel than killing him, but still.
Which is my central problem with it being set in like middle America, or like middle class America, where it's like you get to kind of have your social commentary thing, but you don't have the cop who is like, I really care about you, Edward. You don't have him put him somewhere actually safe. You just have him go, it's all right. He's in his house, which is historically quite easy to break into, and is the reason why he's here in the fucking first place. It was broken into by an Avon lady.
But that, because it's what Ben said, right? So when Ben was talking just now, he said in an ideal world he'd be put into custody and all that kind of stuff. We're not in an ideal world. People are failed all the time by government institutions, and Edward's another one. Like that's life. Like
yeah, and also it's like Avon lady was probably the first to go into that place. Well, maybe she wasn't, but who knows? It's just like no one dares to go into that castle. That's just like this haunted thing that people just avoid. It's like in all those like horror films, like you just don't go to that castle. It's something wrong about it. We've seen it time and time again. It's that trope that like only like the really like brave people would go into it. It's like the most average people not even bother to do it, which was like 90% of the town wouldn't even touch him. So yeah, the cop was like, yep, let him go back to the haunted castle. I'm not going to go in there again. I'm staying away. Like probably a lot of people would. It's like, yep, forget that. Forget that. I'm not going anywhere near that place. So it's, yeah.
It could still be the idea of like sometimes not knowing how to help somebody and not kind of having the kind of the education or the resources to actually give somebody what they need. I think somebody mentioned it earlier, but the amount of people that kind of said to him, I'll put you in touch with somebody who might be able to help, but nobody actually kind of ever did. Like, maybe there just isn't the resource or support there that actually the policeman can signpost him to, and therefore it's better to kind of leave him in what he knows and kind of where he was probably for quite a long time, kind of uninterrupted. Yeah, I think it's kind of maybe a comment on just on the fact that there isn't really that kind of resource or clarity in terms of what he needs, and therefore there's nowhere he can really go otherwise really than back to what he knows.
Yeah, I think
Death by Angry Mob it is then.
I think to Alex's point, put yourself on mute, please.
I was going to talk.
I'm a person. I can hear myself like in too many different places at the same time. I think to Alex's point about the scene with the angry mob, I think reasonably, just for the kind of the commentary that the film's trying to make, I don't think the police officer was ever going to do more for him than letting him go. At the same time, it would have been nice to see him kind of do a little bit more than nothing with the townspeople and just be like, oh, he's dead. And then get in his car and drive away. Like, I feel like maybe we should have seen him like arguing with the townspeople or sending people away, and then they came back and the drama started up again. Or maybe Jim was lying in wait somewhere and was like snuck past like a cordon or something, because a police officer is like that. Their job isn't to only arrest somebody, or if they're American, just shoot somebody dead. Like, you're also kind of there to de-escalate things, and he didn't do anything really to not anything, because he did make an attempt to de-escalate the situation, but he could have taken that a few steps further and the ultimate effects still been the same, because you didn't do what was needed. You didn't take him to a safe place. You didn't, make his where he is secure, but you also like didn't even just check that people didn't ransack his place afterwards. And when I was watching it, I did kind of feel like the women of the town were kind of superfluous to what was going on. Like, I felt like only for the sake of Winona Ryder being able to go out at the end and say, he's dead. Look at the evidence. Like, here's literally one of his hands. Only for that point are the town people there. Otherwise, like, it's really a showdown between Jim, Edward, and Kim. Really, in my opinion.
I reckon the police officer saw Winona Ryder do that and go, I should have done that, because they're stupid enough they won't actually go and confirm he's fucking dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. I was going to say all of this is kind of reminding me. I raised, I think, my story score up by a point, because it's reminding me about something about Get Out in certain films. So obviously, with there's a lot of commentary in this film, and it's all completely true. Obviously, it's done in an interesting, comical way, that in kind of fantasy, almost cartoon-like way, that people might not associate straight to what's happening in real life. We have a lot of balanced people here. So it's a bit different. But it kind of reminds me of how with Get Out, the ending, there was a lot of things about the film that were, of course, commentary, and that were just like hitting on things that happen in real life. And the ending was very realistic. And when they did the test screening, how people really didn't like it because it didn't end in a better way. they were reminded too much of reality. Now, obviously, these are two very different times, two very different films, but it's an interesting thing. Obviously, at the time, a film like this was really needed. Whether or not a lot of like, I don't know how many people actually of the main kind of mainstream film goers actually got those messages or not. I don't know. Maybe someone else could tell me. Because obviously, we might see it, especially in the age we are, and probably people like us back then, we probably would have noticed a little bit, or certain critics might see it, but does the main public kind of see it, or is it just a kind of nice conversation starter that gets them thinking, oh yeah, she didn't do that thing that the husband did. Yeah, that's not the best thing if they think about it. I don't know. But yeah, it is. Maybe certain things could have been done a bit better, but it has a lot of good points. And I respect and admire the points and ideas behind all of it. Just like when Rob said, "Well, yeah, that's the point. The institution failed him." It is just like, and then it just reminded me again of real life to this day how much basically what that cop did is what so many cops in child protection services, especially in America specifically, will do. Unless the kid is.
If the kid has scissors for hands, then he'll do something different.
Unless the kid is dead or dying.
Or if you murder the CEO.
Oh man,
Ooh,
let's not even get it. Let's not even get on that. That is wow.
If you murder someone in the street, forget he'll be able to get away with anything.
But it's so many. Sorry, it's kind of bringing up kind of memories of different stories of like children being in really messed up conditions. The neighbors, the nosy neighbors, actually reporting it. And child services going like, well, are they still alive? But they could die any moment because what's happening. Mm-hmm. It's so sad. So yeah, from that point, pretty accurate. Again, maybe it could have been done a little bit differently, but I get where it's coming from, where it's going to. And on a completely separate note, sorry.
Oh, wait. If you're doing a separate note, let me come in quickly.
yeah, go.
Because I think this is a thing for me. Like, so I can totally see why it's not subtle enough, or like why it's too kind of
on the nose.
Yeah, like Alex said, like I can see why it'd be too on the nose for some people. But the thing is like when I'm watching it, I'm going like, yeah, that's how I've felt in this situation where this thing has happened, and it's like, yeah, I don't have scissors for hands, but to me, it's very obvious that the way I'm being treated is in a way that's not set up for me to respond to properly. And it's like, well, if you can have a film like Edward Scissorhands where people are doing this to someone with scissor hands and it's still not coming across to everyone, then clearly it needs to be on the nose. it's still something that people don't get. So that for me is why I think it's so like such a beautifully written film, is because it's still responding to something that people just don't get, and it's 34 years old now. So
I do get what it's going for. I just think it kind of breaks down when the reality is it's a guy with scissors for hands. It always sounds funny saying it.
But you could say that for anything. Like when somebody doesn't understand anything, like the reality is that it's the opposite of what they've understood, and it's like whether you can literally see that they've got scissors for hands or not. Something that's obvious to one person isn't obvious to the person who's receiving it. Like that's just
No, but I'm saying real life examples are like I don't. I don't know. I think it's just the metaphor itself, and I just go. It'd be like if it was Simon's suggestion, and it's like, oh, it's Johnny Oven Face, and it's like, okay, yeah, think certain people do need other like accommodations, but specifically Johnny Oven Face, he has an oven for a face. Like he needs something a little bit more heavy duty.
But you could go the other way and say that about literally any situation in real life, where it's like it's obvious that this person needed something that you didn't give them, but to you it wasn't. Like that's just yeah.
But yeah, anyway, pretty good. One
To be
thing
fair,
I
was against this from the opening.
Oh yeah, don't worry. I knew that. I knew it, like when I did Pat, I was like, oh, they're gonna.
The minute she was, Grandma, where does snow come from? And she's like, oh, it's a long story. Go to sleep. And she went, please. And she was like, no, I'm not telling you the story. It's too late. I'm not going to. Granny's been drinking. I'm not doing the story. And she goes, and she goes, oh, all right then. And I was like, why did you bother? Why did you bother wasting my time with this? And I was like, what I think we really need to have, we need to have one opening like that where the granny goes, look, I'll arm wrestle you for it, yeah? And then her and the granddaughter can have an arm wrestle. She tells her where snow comes from. And then the granddaughter goes like, all right, and kind of like square up. And then the granddaughter absolutely annihilates her. She like knocks her into the camera, and like the camera sort of jostles, and she goes off screen. And then the grandma sort of like picks herself up, fixes her hair, puts her glasses back on. And she goes, "All right, it's about scissors." I think that would have been amazing. That would have got me on side immediately.
I don't think you would have, because that sounded very much like Once Upon a Deadpool. Like where he goes into like the Princess Bride.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think you're making a Deadpool opening. That's what it is. I don't think you. No. Yeah, that's kind of
this. Isn't Ghostwriter?
I'm sorry. That is kind of how that opening begins, because he finds the kid from the Princess Bride and he forces him into the story. That's
I was looking forward to doing that, and now you've just ruined all of it. Thank you. What a horrible night.
In the words of George Harrison, it's been done.
Homer.
One thing I wanted to talk about, actually, you know about the whole scene where kind of like, I forget her name, but the scene where Edward goes in the back room and he's kind of set upon by what's her face, the housewife, and Joyce, and he basically she doesn't. Well, she basically does sexual assault him to a degree, and then the scene after they're in the dining room, and they're just having in the dining room, and they're just having dinner, and he casually mentions it, and everyone's like, "Oh fuck!" And then Alan Arkin, the dad, kind of like ignores it and just like diverts the conversation a bit. I thought that was a bit, well, damn, that's quite ahead of its time in a sense, because it's kind of like, yeah, he's gone. Edward Scissorhands himself has gone through his own Me Too movement. He's just said something that's kind of wrong. He doesn't know how to kind of go through it and then comprehend it. And everyone's kind of ignoring it. The people that do know what went wrong kind of don't want to speak up. And it's like, oh, shit. And that's kind of like a very subtle moment. Like, shit, that's quite bad. And it's going to have ramifications. And obviously it kind of does with Joyce. Kind of once everyone turns on him, she turns... It makes it even worse by saying that he raped her or attempted to. And yeah, it's just quite, yeah, that struck me this time, seeing it this time again. Like, oh crap, this is something that many men and women have gone through, just being like forced upon someone, don't know how to read the room or to situation and they know it's wrong, they don't know what to say or do anything, and they just kind of want to get out. And yeah, it's quite horrible, and especially worse when he goes to the people he thought he could trust, and even Peg and Kim is just like don't know what to do about it, and it's just like shit. That's quite poignant in a horrible kind of way. That poor Edward, even him being different and weird and unique, would still have to face something many men and women would face all the time as well. Just being put upon and put into situations they do not agree to or consent with, and that's kind of a scary prospect. And then just being turned and flipped on its head for being, he becomes he's the victim that becomes the villain, and that's another subtle thing this film quite does. And I don't think it's on the nose of the rest of the film, because it's something that I didn't notice until like the sixth watch I've seen it now, and it's quite heavy, but still interesting, especially at the time when it was made.
I think this is going to be a big leap, but just bear with me. It really made me think of a bit like the I don't know if people obviously know the case of Emmett Till, for example. I know it's a big leap. I don't know if kind of how familiar people are with it, but it just kind of, this is why I spoke about it kind of being a bit of a metaphor for society and kind of certain I don't know, like societal structures and hierarchies, because I do think that there is something about, and I think still to this day now, the kind of impact of like the white middle class woman in like society, and being kind of very heavily like believed in and kind of having quite a lot of influence in terms of some of the oppression and marginalization that certain communities can face. And so that moment did. I mean, Emmett Till was awful, and obviously, again, I don't know how kind of familiar people were, but he was accused of flirting with a white woman. I can't remember the years, way back. And he was then kind of attacked via like a lynch mob, basically. Brutally, a horrible case, but just kind of reminded me of that. And I think that kind of sometimes I think Alec kind of mentioned about the kind of community of women and kind of, or maybe Pat, about like the, not like I said, I don't think the kind of mean-spiritedness, but the idea of like that perception or narrative being a really kind of stronghold and influence within the community, and all kind of the women almost being quite homogenous in a way. Obviously, Joyce is maybe a bit more promiscuous in the sense that this is my reading, she didn't have a husband, so I think she kind of was a bit more kind of promiscuous than maybe the other wives and kind of women were. But it's interesting, I guess. Yeah, I was just kind of thinking of it as that idea of like the shared narrative way of thinking, and that kind of one very clear voice that no one really, apart from Peg, stood out as being kind of different. They were all kind of very very kind of similar in that. But I thought that kind of, that particular incident, not so much how the family reacted, Ben, but I think the kind of idea of Joyce kind of turning it back on him and kind of saying actually he did something wrong, and kind of being believed, and that kind of influencing the rest of the community, I think is actually something we see happen quite a lot, and a voice that is a demographic of voice that is always kind of held in quite high regard and always quite often believed as well. So that was just kind of, that particular scene did kind of spike that up in terms of my own thoughts or kind of feelings as well.
Yeah, that's what's quite good about how the townsfolk and the town itself is represented. I feel was this like, is there's a lot of like, because if when they made the film, it was like they built and painted 60 houses, all practically the same sort of design, just painted them different colors and stuff, and it kind of has this kind of like unreal quality to it, because everything is kind of, there's a bit of seediness in the beauty, because it's all kind of like cookie cutter. Everything's colourful, but it's generic, and it's kind of fake and plastic. Like obviously, like the fake grapes and the fake fruit on the tables and stuff that Edward can't understand or can't get his mind around. It's like, what's the point of this? Because it's kind of like everyone wants to be like everyone else, and everyone wants to have what everyone else has got. So there's just this thing of this community just wants to be this, what their idea of like America, or this idealism that they have in their head of what they want to have, this suburban dream. This is what the house should be, but they don't have this any real attachment to what they have in their homes. And like the art on the walls doesn't mean a thing to them. It's just there to kind of like be decoration, and just be there just to kind of say, yeah, I've got something she's got, and it's like, so it has this kind of like weird inverse to like everything else that Edward is known for. And it's like, yeah, sure, he's grown up in a Dracula-like castle that's kind of spooky, and it's got the Tim Burton aesthetic to a T. Everything's gothic and stuff, but the fact that the inventor, Vincent Price's character, is still kind of, despite it being run down and falling apart a bit, it still has its own quirkiness, and it's just because he's dying and he's going to leave this world and just leave all that to rack and ruin. You can see that that's the only part of the surrounding area that had a bit of character to it, and its own unique thing. Even if it's a bit weird and spooky and strange, it still was far beyond what everything else was going to town. Yeah.
That was a very difficult element to the story, the whole Joyce thing. That was hard to, yeah. Yet another part of the world that is very much a problem. Yeah, and to see how the lack of proper care that Edward received afterwards, even though they obviously showed concern and realized that that was a really wrong thing that happened to him, we don't see anything that really happens in terms of care after that, specifically for that.
Guys, I'm going to head off.
Okay, dude.
Did you want to do a favourite scene?
Yeah. Okay, quick favourite scene.
It was only the bit where he started clawing the walls on the way down to the bathroom and started beating the shit out of the bathroom.
Oh, the Freddy Krueger scene.
Yeah, it got a laugh out of me.
What about when he scared the shit out of that religious lady with the with the sculpture and the red lights outside her window?
Or when he left the house and started chopping down all the sculptures he made.
Yeah, like chopped a leg off. Yeah.
Oh.
Just reminds you of like what we would have been like as kids, getting told off by our parents and having a drop.
Literal tantrum, yeah.
I know I've had plenty of them. Anyway, I'll catch you guys.
Bit of it, man.
Bye, dude. I shall see you tomorrow, man. Bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be there. See you later, man.
Yeah, see you later.
Yeah, any other favourite scenes? Who wants to go?
My favourite scene is, maybe this is a bit but my favourite scene was at the beginning when the evil lady goes into the house, and when she first sees Edward, like, she's really scared and she's like, don't go any closer. And then, like, through the course of that interaction, when she realizes he isn't a threat to her and he isn't holding a weapon up against her, her kindness comes through. Like, I had immediately judged her as like, "Oh, this annoying woman, busybody, she'll do anything to make a sale." But that immediate kindness and kind of unwavering, he is a good person, you're just misunderstanding him. From that moment on, she has that, and I think that's a really, really sweet moment. I know there's a lot kind of going on in the film to just be like, someone's kind to him, but I really liked that moment. I thought it was really lovely.
Yeah, I think the opening in general was really nice. Actually, it was another thing that I picked up on a bit more this time. I think is that it all opens up like a conventional musical would. So you've got like the Avon lady going around and like touching on each character and basically like defining who everyone is before the story starts. I thought that was quite a neat way to get everyone in. Like I really like that first door that she knocked on, and she's like, I never buy anything from you, and she just drops the facade, and she's like, yeah, I know.
To add to that, I think my favorite scene was, I was gonna say, the beginning part. So yeah, just the whole kind of Avon Eminem to a T kind of thing. I yeah, I found that whole part funny. Even the fact to decide to go up to a house that this yeah to that place to try and sell something. Obviously we understand later why she never went into the house where the lady placed the organ. That makes sense. Um, I mean, yeah, if like the amount of things people will do in MLMs to get the even offer of sales. I mean, we've listened to some stories, and even somewhere people it usually is women in more vulnerable situations who are in the companies, but even a situation where a lady crashed into someone's post box.
I don't believe that was a true story. It's a completely wild story.
But I mean, it's America. We've heard some wilder stuff that is definitely true. But people like I say crashed into it. Put it this way. She might have accidentally crashed into a post box, but then turned it into a sales pitch.
It sounds like a thing that she's done before. Honestly, the whole thing Reddit and my the asshole.
Even
it's not real.
even the one where there was a car accident and the lady was
that also didn't sound real.
But there's so many of these things that actually do happen in America. It's just like it's just actually things like this happen.
Yeah, there is some wild.
Just like, oh, we had an accident, but you know what might help? And then suddenly they're making a sales pitch. And this, it's just like, no, just give me your insurance details. You know what? I'm going, blah, blah. Here's my, it's just like, you know what? Anyway, point is, I think the beginning was my favorite scene just because of, yeah.
Just, I guess that's who everyone is, which I think is really good.
I just liked how she did the Avon thing. I didn't even really care about meeting everyone else. But it was good. It was done really well.
I won't say their name for like obvious reasons, but have you guys got any messages from somebody at school who's been taken in by Herbalife?
Fortunately not, but I know about.
I think I know who you're talking about. That's the problem. Okay.
They've sent me like 10 messages like, buy Herbalife, you can get 10% off Herbalife, free trial of Herbalife, I'll give you loads of Herbalife. And then they sent me a message the other day and it was like, oh, if you're not going to reply to me, I'm just going to block you. And I'm like, you're just trying to flog me Herbalife.
You're nice that you haven't already blocked them. Like there's stories where, fortunately, we're not in America, so it's harder for some of this stuff to kind of happen. But there's one of the common things that happens at least like 5-10 years ago. I don't know how often it happens now. I think it still does. But old friends will meet up and be like, "Oh yeah, just want to kind of talk about X, Y, and Z. Meet up." It's like, okay. And then, but don't drive. I'll pick you up. Okay. But then just come to my house. It's okay, you know. You just come. Or I can come to you. No. We're gonna go to this diner place, you know. And so Okay, it's a bit out of the way, but all right. And then they get there, they make this pitch, and then they're just like, wait, I don't have a way to get home. And this person is like verbally attacking me with this company pitch or whatever. I don't want any of it. Just take me home. But at least here we can just ease a lot of places. I mean, maybe not everywhere, especially in some more remote places in England. But like in a lot of places, we can just get the bus and just or train or something. Be like, yeah, I'm getting home by myself. Bye. Like I ain't doing this. But there's a lot of times I'll just corner them and be like, yeah. So don't worry, I'll take you home. But let me just tell you about this, and this, and this, and this. Oh wait, we're going. When I drop you back to yours, I could talk to your mom, your dad, your husband, your family. You know, like we can talk about this because maybe they'll be interested in too. But as Camilla said to me, we'll get back to the film. Sorry.
That is frightening. That is
Yeah.
frightening, man. Like, wow.
Interesting.
Oh,
You
you
know,
remind me of part of Lemony Snicket. Isn't that kind of like what realtors are like? That like aggressive salesy kind of vibe.
Yes,
Hmm.
100%.
You know.
That was said with experience.
I worked for Savills for
Oh,
6.5 years, and yeah, and I know it's not the same as like people selling houses because it's like luxury new builds, but yeah, I've got quite a bit of experience with estate agents, I'll say,
mhm.
and
I
had
never
the
want to.
chance to go back recently, and I don't think I can face it. That's how it left me feeling.
That's fair enough, man. I can't imagine it was. It was nice.
I could I one of my favorite scenes was already mentioned, but I'll revisit it is when Edward was sitting down and taking a break from his rampage, like out on the sidewalk, and that dog comes to sit up beside him, and he just clips his bangs off. So adorably. I thought that was
cute.
sweet. And that just like really showed just like how like harmless and sweet and considerate Edward is. That was really nice. Um, and then I have a few things written down. I think one of the more touching things was when you start to see that Kim is showing Edward that she really just genuinely care for him, in her flawed way. But like when they're having the conversation about how it turned out to be Jim's house that they broke into, and she learns that Edward knew all along that it was Jim's house, and she was so confused. And then they have that like really sweet moment where she realizes that how much he cares about her. And yeah, their relationship really was very touching. Another part of their relationship that was touching was when he refuses to hug her, I think because she's scared of hurting her. But then she decides to just like make it work and wraps his arms around her. I just thought that was really sweet. Yeah, really bittersweet moments. But yeah, definitely part of my favorite scenes.
I think. Are you going to go speak?
No.
Oh, I heard you. You sure?
Yeah,
I heard you. I think I've seen, but I guess it was a scene, but it maybe more of a, like I don't know, like a motif or kind of like recurring thing. But I think Peg's like desire to try and help him with the scars and kind of some of the scars on his face. I think that it kind of made me feel it was almost that she was trying to. A bit like kind of, I don't know, metaphorical in terms of her own actions, like trying to help him but not really being kind of fully equipped to be able to, and kind of doing the short term like I'll take the sting out of the things, but the long term actually covering the scars she wasn't really able to do. And I just thought that was quite like a recurring part of the Avon lady, but part of their kind of relationship, her feeling that they needed to be like, there wasn't really again that idea of like, well, why do they need to be covered? Is it that he kind of looks more pleasant that way or kind of more approachable that way? And I kind of yeah, I guess some of our discussion and I guess some of my own reflections from the film, it kind of makes me think that it's almost like, that kind of like desire to try to help, but not really being able to, and that kind of being, in, I don't know, synergy with the kind of actual help that she was trying to do as well. So kind of an interesting motif for me that I kind of like seeing play out across the film.
Yeah, it's all part of that thing, in it, like trying to make him fit into a mold that he can't.
Yeah. And her having like good intentions, but not really being able to do what she needs to do. Yeah.
Mm.
What Manuel was mentioned earlier was quite interesting, because I had a quote that was kind of reminded me of it, or something Tim Burton said while making this film, that he went to a high school reunion around the time, and he came to realize that kind of like the losers and unpopular kids and the misunderstood kids in school were doing pretty good, and all the popular kids were down on the downslope of their lives. He felt that he noticed that there was this kind of like weird juxtaposition of how things were in school versus where. And I think that's quite an interesting observation. He kind of like, I think most of us would probably agree with that. Most of us in this chat right now, we were the unpopular ones. I can't speak for everyone else, but we were the kind of like the ones that weren't cool, or kind of like we were the nerds, or this or that. And I like to think we're all doing really well, and it's quite an interesting thing. Got me thinking about this film in a different way, just because of how expectations are put on you, and how you felt as a kid, like Edward felt as a kid, because he's got a mind of a child in a sense, and versus kind of like how you a couple of years later, and it's just how you're put into these circumstances that you can't control, shapes you to. Does like nature and nurture make a difference? I think it sometimes does, but I think overall it's kind of like your heart and soul dictates of who you are as a person, and no matter where you're put, it makes you become the best person you are eventually, from what you experience and go through, and what people you meet and encounter kind of like changes you and kind of like molds you into. So yeah, I thought it had a lot of really positive influence and interesting, thought-provoking ideas. Just like that idea, just like, yeah, I think most of us, we might have felt we were a bit misunderstood and kind of like unappreciated when we were at school, but now I feel that we found our spot in life, and we've kind of, we're all getting there. We're finding a piece in the puzzle and trying to find our calling, and a lot of us have got that, and I feel that it just takes time, and just means that you just need to find the right people, and they'll help nurture you to become who you are. So that's a really nice message in the film, I felt. But in regards to the favourite scenes in particular, I think obviously the Vincent Price scene. I know Alec didn't like it, but I feel like it just had this sort of like sad, melancholic nature. But I felt it was just wonderful seeing Vincent Price for the final time in a Tim Burton movie, because he adored Vincent Price, and he kind of like his biggest influence of all films that he grew up watching with Vincent in them, and it was just perfect to have him as this inventor that's kind of like, he's also a lonely soul. He's reached a point in his life, he's just, all he does is work and make inventions and just like making cookies and whatnot, and he's like, look, I need someone, but he's kind of like, it's too late, and that's kind of like the very sad thing about it. And his performance, adding into his age as an actor as well, was quite extra poignant, and made it like tragic to see him die and see Edward half finished for all those reasons. And it's kind of like he's that antithesis of Victor Frankenstein, who kind of makes him for like very nefarious reasons and kind of like selfish reasons. Yeah, I want to just make life. Whereas Edward's inventor, he just wants a companion. He just doesn't want to be lonely. That was the main reason Edward becomes and is brought into existence, because of that reason. So there's a lot of like melancholy there. So yeah, I did enjoy those moments. And yeah, the moments as well where you see Kim dancing in the snow manufactured by Edward, just like shaving off the ice blocks and stuff, just making his thing, and just that fleeting moment of like happiness and joy, it just comes crashing down as soon as he accidentally cuts her, and it just goes to hell after that. But yeah, there's little moments like that, really nice.
I think something that another thing that I maybe related to more this time, and I thought was really nice, was like all of the like the little flashbacks that Edward was having, and it was always that there was just like a little moment that made him think of something, and then it kind of showed you his memory of something that he did with the inventor, and it's that was getting me a bit this time.
Yeah. Alec or Simon?
I think myself, because like, I'm making it sound weird. A lot of it, especially with the color schemes and all the stuff, kind of blended together. I'm trying to think about what particular scene I'm thinking, because like, for instance, the Vincent Price scene are quite sweet as well, because it shows you like how he was and how he could have potentially could have become kind of like a normal human with regular hands, not scissor hands, you know. But unfortunately, that didn't quite work out that way. But like, I'm trying to think about not just those scenes. I'm trying to think about everything else. I mean, I guess this is a question. I think what I do like is like all of those sort of like stuff, his element, and just being like, I was like, oh yeah, I'm done. I was like, oh wow, we can see the artistic side of him, and and seeing how that is. It was very nice. It was very simple. It was like he just, maybe it's like, I know some people with like, I guess, sort of like that, sort of like, is it ADD or OCD, I guess, or something that has like sort of like that, like artistic clinch in their brain that just can, like, if you let them do what they need to do, they can make it amazing. But they don't need to listen to all these like little miniature social cues. Just let them be, and sometimes you can just make the most coolest stuff. But like, unfortunately, because Edward has to, live in a society that he lives in, he has to learn about the way that people have treated him, and it's just like, yeah, it's very awkward and very weird for him. And I think it was Alec who had the gag reflex, because they were just overfeeding him before he finished like chewing his food and like swallowed. There's something about, I need to ask Emmanuel, what is ambrosia salad? I think I've heard of it. I just don't know what it looks like. It just looks like something. I don't know what it.
I said it looked like beetroot.
It's
Okay.
We have it here too, and I like it. But it's weird. It's it's a dessert salad, and from the recipes that I've had, it's mainly like marshmallows and coconut and maybe pineapple, and I think you could either use like whipped cream as the kind of
Corey,
dressing.
I won't be like. I don't think of it as you lost me at dessert salad, and like I kind of my brain kind of like shut off slightly. So yeah, but but no, I was listening to you what you were saying. Just my brain just went stop. You could literally hear the disc scratch in my brain. It went. I was like what? I was like okay, whew. Okay, it's not okay, but it's just seeing him.
Just thinking about it.
Okay, but it's just okay, but it's just seeing him being in his element, just doing his artistic stuff and being enjoying what he was doing was the nicest stuff to see. It's just like it was considerably peaceful in this slightly weird film, and it's like that's nice. You can have some peace. Some peace is like all you can really ask for, you know. Yeah, that's my favorite scenes. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
Nice.
Alex?
No favourite scene, but Bill's a cool guy. Big ups for Bill.
Fair.
Oh, I remembered another one.
Yeah,
So, because it was something that you pointed out that I just remembered. I thought was quite neat. Was you know, at the end when the guy's sitting in his garage and he's like, "Oh, have you caught that cripple yet?"
Oh,
And it's like he was the guy who earlier on was like, "Oh, don't let them define you by your disability, man."
yeah, you want like a handicap or something, you know.
yeah, jeez.
I thought that was a really nice touch. That was yeah. It's that thing of like, oh yeah, before you've done anything to upset anyone, you're fine, but afterwards, that's all you are. That's,
But also how like people can be quite even if you maybe share I don't know, like an identity or particular kind of community, actually not all, what's the phrase, like not all kinfolk are kinfolk, obviously they're not, you know, idea, but like you might see an alliance at one point, but people can very easily kind of turn against like you if you're then seen as kind of causing a threat or kind of, you know, tarnishing people with the same kind of brush kind of thing. Yeah. Any other thoughts or reflections before we hand over to Camilla?
Yeah. One last thing I'll say that I felt was quite cool that I've only really recently realised is it's more to do with the casting. It's more like how interestingly cast this film was in terms of like the main players. Like Johnny Depp at the time was known as a TV heartthrob in the 21 Jump Street TV series. And so him being someone like Edward Scissorhands was very against the type. And you have Winona Ryder, who just obviously was in Beetlejuice as like the de facto goth girl. And she's kind of like opposite of that in this. She's kind of like trying to blend in with the kids. She's kind of like nothing of the sort. She's not the outsider. And then you have Anthony Michael Hall, who was like the big jock bully in this, whereas in The Breakfast Club he was like the big geeky nerd guy. So it was very interesting that Tim Burton was like, yeah, let's get people that you wouldn't expect to be these characters to kind of make you like be more invested in them because of how different and how against type they are. So I thought that was very interesting.
I love hearing it just because like I think I was like 4 years old when this came out. So there's no way I would have I love hearing about context like that surrounding it that I wouldn't know now that I didn't. Yeah, that's cool. That's interesting.
Johnny Depp and Winona Ryder were engaged as well. We found out.
Yeah, they were. I think the tattoo story is great. If you guys don't know, he got like a tattoo that says Winona forever, and a few years after they broke up, he got it like altered to Wino forever.
Right, how old was Winona Ryder in this film?
I think 17 or something. They said they got engaged in 1990.
I can't remember how old Depp was. I think he must have been like early 20s. I don't think it was that drastically different.
26, I think, because
Yeah.
Rob asked, and I said I googled it. I think he was 26, and maybe she was 17 or something like that.
Yeah.
That's a bit odd.
I mean,
But
he was
again-
good looking back in the day. I mean,
yeah, but thinking.
I don't think that was Pam's point of contention there.
No, it's just like the Winona Ryder is like at this age she wasn't during her peculiar kleptomaniac phase before she went to do Stranger Things. Yeah, she had a problem.
That,
yeah, she had a shoplifting problem. It was,
did she?
remember. Yeah, I remember it being like on the news because she was quite popular still back then a while, and after she was caught shoplifting, and everyone asked, "Don't you make a lot of money? Why did you shoplift?" It's like, she
Simon
explained.
first? Oh no.
Simon's frozen.
Yeah.
Oh, am I?
Frozen. Yeah.
Oh, am I frozen?
You're there right now.
Okay. But but she was diagnosed with being a kleptomaniac, so she just couldn't help herself supposedly. That's what I heard at least. I was like, oh, that explains the shoplifting.
She did help herself.
Yeah, I think shoplift to that point is not about obviously it's not a lack of resources problem. It's
definitely a mental health issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, good.
Well, I
Good,
enjoyed
good.
it. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
For favourite season, anything else?
I think we're good. I think Camilla's ready to go.
Miller, what is your pick?
Yes, I'm ready to go. So my pick would end the year / if I'm honest, I forgot it was my pick this week, but this was planned to be my pick. But this speech still stands that thought would end the year with / start the new year with a bang on a joyful note. I don't know about anybody else, but this has been a rough year to say the least. It's been pretty miserable, but my pick is Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. It's
I've not seen that.
a big, larger than life film. It's one of my favorites. Somehow, Emmanuel's never seen it. I'm looking forward to him watching it. I hope everybody has fun singing along to the musical numbers. And everyone knows the choreography of one of the closing performance songs, because I personally know all of it, and I just hope somebody else is loves it as much as I do. It's not a musical to anybody concerned, but obviously there's musical numbers in it. And it is, I forgot to look up where it's streaming. I think it's on available to rent in the places films are available to.
It says, I think.
Oh yeah, apparently it's actually on Amazon Prime.
Woohoo! Drag queens, can't wait.
Yeah, that's an awesome bit.
And on favorite scenes, I probably have to go first. Otherwise, someone will probably take my favorite scene because it's just that good. Yeah.
Nice. I'm excited. I've never seen it, but I wanted to.
Yeah, it's so weird for me when you said it wasn't a musical, because every time I pass by that theatre near Soho and I just see that big red shoe, I'm like, oh, I was like, oh, is it not a musical? Because my mind is like, that's a musical stage play place. It's not. I swear to God, it is a musical, but no, it's just got musical numbers in them, right?
Musical numbers in them. It's got 5 musical numbers or maybe 6.
I'm pretty sure if it's got 5 musical numbers, that can count as a musical, to be honest.
Oh, there's a whole lot of things that happen in between them, and the musical numbers aren't central to the plot. They're just performances because it's about drag queens. So,
Is this the 1994
yes.
version? Cool.
Yeah, but
it is streaming on the usual places on Amazon MGM Plus for free. I don't know if anyone has that.
I don't think so. I mean, I could subscribe, but I just probably forget to unsubscribe. But if it's not, wait, so you're saying that there's 5 musical numbers, but they're not essential to the plot. It's just they just happen.
Yeah, they're like things that, because in musicals, there'll be conversations that are being had in the music, or it drives the plot forward or whatever. But it's just they're just kind of happening. You'll see it. You'll find out when you watch it.
Yeah.